Discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of April. Today, sick and tired. Nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services will go on strike later today. Can patients really be safe? The big day is on the way. Coronation lessons will be available to all schools in England to help youngsters understand the celebration, and we've been given exclusive access to one of them.
The last rescue flight out of Khartoum as the agreed ceasefire in Sudan expires tonight. With little food, electricity and medication, there are serious concerns about welfare. And do you test your blood pressure regularly? Well, the latest research shows a considerable number of young people in England have risky high blood pressure without even knowing it. We'll chat to an expert later.
Good morning, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, before we get going, I just wonder how, because we are now officially in the week of the coronation, because Sunday is the first day of the week, as you no doubt know. So, where are you in terms of your preparations?
Yes.
Whether you're going big or whether you're just keeping it low-key, have you got anything in place? Have you done anything?
No, I'm still thinking about outfits. That's the biggest pressure, I think. So that's my
for our
worry.
show on
For our
Saturday.
show on Saturday, please do tune in if you are.
Yeah.
If you're at home and not heading down into London. So that's my biggest pressure. What about you? Where are you up to?
Well, I ordered yesterday because I saw that I keep seeing these things on lampposts. You know, like the official plaque things. So I've ordered. We have got a gate on the drive. So I've ordered 2 for the gate.
Nice.
Sort of one for each half of the gate.
A plaque or like a...
Yeah, it's like a sort of disc like that, with the official logo on. So I thought, well, that'll be nice.
Oh, well, that's fancy. Yeah, well...
I mean, no, it's not over the top, but it's just marking it, isn't it?
Oh,
I think it's nice to mark it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a historic event, isn't it? It's all part of the build-up. It's great to see it. I was just saying yesterday, there's like... I don't know how you describe them. It's almost like a bouquet or a posy almost, but it's a ribbon, and then they're being put up on all the lampposts in my local area, and it looks amazing. So it's red, white and blue, kind of bouquets almost.
Yeah,
tied to lampposts. It looks wonderful. If you've got anything like that going on in your local area, in your community, they're starting to spring up, all the plaques.
Yeah.
Do send in photos, maybe when it gets a bit lighter. Is it light outside yet? Don't think so.
I don't know.
No.
We're in the basement.
We're in the basement. Couldn't tell.
But no, I just think it's nice to get stuck in with that, and I just thought it'd be nice to do the same.
Yeah.
I have also bought for Coronation Day a little Charles's cipher. I've got as a little lapel badge, which I shall wear on the day.
Oh.
Which is really classy.
You're
actually
very organised.
Yeah.
And you'd got your tie ready a few weeks ago, didn't you?
The tie's all sorted. I've got a brand new tie in imperial purple.
And we've all been looking at it. It looks very good. Oh, I might try and wear purple with you, you know. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's good to be organised. And are we thinking about the food? Are people having street parties? Do let us know. I know people have been trying to make this coronation quiche. I'm not sold on it, to be honest.
Oh, aren't you?
No, it's spinach, tarragon.
Yeah.
And broad beans. I mean, come on.
Honestly, I think it sounds quite nice. I like a broad bean.
Is it veggie?
Yeah, it is
Oh, look,
veggie.
so it's good, isn't it, for you guys?
And they've done
The
lots
veggies
of
out
cheese in it, and they've done a vegan version as well.
there. Oh, have they?
They've released everything. You could chuck a bit of ham in it if you want a meaty
I'd
version.
need, yeah, nothing beats quiche Lorraine, to be honest. So
you
that's
go.
what it is. But let us know, have you tried the coronation quiche? Are you having a street party? Are you having a street party? I feel like...
Well, no, because we're working, aren't
Well,
we?
yeah, but later.
Later on, no, I'll be exhausted by the
No,
time...
I shall not. No.
No,
Well, maybe we can knock up something outside Buckingham Palace.
that would be nice, yeah. We'll have our own street party at the palace.
I think that's a great idea. But do let us know what you're up to, coronation. How's the build-up going for you? GB News at GBViews? No, GBViews at gbnews.uk. There you go. Got there in the end.
You got there in the end. Now, our main story today, nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services are walking out tonight.
Yes, it was cut short after the High Court ruled the walkout broke ballot rules.
Yes, it was meant to be going on till Tuesday, but it's now only going on for 24 hours. But services like intensive care will be affected by the strike for the first time. Life-preserving care, we're told, will be maintained.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has sent this report from Nottingham.
The winter in which these strikes began has long ended, and now the Royal College of Nursing's mandate to strike is melting away too, but not quite yet. From 8 o'clock tonight until late on Monday, nurses will join picket lines once again. The union wanted to strike until Tuesday, but the High Court said another day would fall outside of their strike mandate, which is only valid for 6 months. A government pay offer of 5% was rejected by RCN members. Other NHS unions are accepting. Speaking ahead of the strike, the RCN's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, said, "Only negotiations can resolve this, and I urge ministers to reopen formal discussions with the college over pay specifically. Nursing staff are looking for a fair settlement that shows the government values and understands their profession." It seems that more strikes are coming. In Bulwell, Nottingham, it's only a short drive to the Queen's Medical Centre. Muriel, who's 88, knows it well. She just spent 2 weeks there with a bad leg. She praised the nurses who looked after her, but says they were exhausted.
The nurses were very good at the Queen's Medical Centre. They all seemed cheerful enough, but they were that busy. They were here, there and everywhere. They're rushing about all the while. They don't get much break at all while they're there.
Muriel says she will support more strikes, but others in Bulwell are unsure.
I do support the nurses' strike, but then again I don't. I feel for the people that's suffering in hospitals.
I know it's all about money and they all got to live, but I was ill last year and if they'd gone on strike I'd be dead now.
They deserve more money than everybody else. They're more important than anybody else, keeps us all alive, they enough, don't they?
Despite being shorter, the industrial action could be tougher on the NHS. Last time, the union guaranteed cancer care and other exemptions. Now that's gone, aside from some local deals. Health and Social Care Secretary Steve Barclay said, "It is hugely disappointing some unions are escalating strike action this week, including the RCN, despite only a third of its members rejecting the government's fair and reasonable offer on pay, which other unions accepted. Summer is coming, but unresolved, these strikes could last until next winter." Will Hollis, GB News in Nottingham.
Well, joining us now is Jason Reid from Young Voices UK. Morning to you, Jason. I mean, what do you make of this? What's your assessment of where the nurses are lying within public opinion? Do you think they still have a suitable amount of public support?
Good morning. I think their public support is waning. I think we're really reaching a crunch point here. As Will said in the report, a lot of other unions are accepting the government's pay offers now. Other healthcare workers in the NHS in other unions such as GMB have accepted the government's pay deals, but the Royal College of Nursing is sticking to its guns. And not only that, it's actually adopting a more extreme position than it has at any point before, because now it is refusing to grant the national exemptions that it has granted for past strikes, which means all kinds of people who weren't on strike before, like intensive care nurses and some emergency nurses and some cancer nurses and so on, will be going on strike as well. They are digging their heels in. We heard after they lost their court case last week just how incredible it was that they didn't even turn up to their own hearing. The judge, I think, said that they displayed a high degree of unreasonableness, and that's not a political statement, of course. That's coming from an impartial judge. This is not the behavior of a group that is ready to negotiate, that's ready to sit down at the table and come to compromises, come to an agreement. This is the behavior of an organization that is taking a radical stance and is not willing to back down and is willing to hold the country hostage to get what it wants.
I mean, Jason, what we're talking about now is half of England's hospitals, half of the mental health and community centres as well. I mean, this is going to cause significant disruption, isn't it? And there is going to be a threat to patient care, isn't there?
There is, exactly. We heard just a few days ago from Great Ormond Street Hospital in London that they were in a really serious, critical situation, that they were unable to provide the ongoing care that their patients needed. I think we're probably going to hear more of that throughout the day, today and tomorrow while they're on strike. And if there are future strikes, we'll undoubtedly hear the same thing again, because it seems that the RCN is going to continue refusing to grant these national exemptions for emergency and the most important nurses. I think it's an incredible position to be taking. They are making clear that they're not going to back down here. I don't know what the end point is here. I hate to think of all the excess deaths and all the people who are going to suffer with their health because they are missing out on the vital treatment and care that they need. It's just not a sustainable position to be in. It's not economically sustainable. The government isn't, sitting on a big pile of money deciding whether to dish it out to the nurses or not. The government has to protect the public finances. They don't want to be raising taxes more than they have to. This money would have to come from somewhere. But the RCN doesn't want to hear it. They don't turn up to their own hearing in court. They don't appear to be willing to negotiate, although they say they are. And so the government is in an impossible position here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we always, you've got to look at both sides in all of this. And at the end of the day, their members have said, look, it's not good enough. I mean, a lot of them saying, look what happened in Scotland, 6.5%, which is a significant difference. They're absolutely within their rights, aren't they, to say, we've got to do more. You've got to actually reflect what we want.
I don't agree that they are within their rights, actually, because they are putting patients in danger. And the Scottish nurses might have got a more generous offer, but the Scottish economy is not in a particularly enviable situation as a result of that. We've got all kinds of higher taxes and other issues in Scottish politics, as well. As Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, pointed out in that report as well, it's not as clear-cut as the members unanimously just saying no. It was only about a third who actually went ahead and rejected the government's offer. And more fundamentally than that, if the RCN is willing to take this radical stance that it won't even provide the most vital, the most important of cancer care and so on, then how on earth is the government supposed to negotiate in good faith? The RCN had never actually voted for strike action before these past few months, but I don't know what's happened. They must have been taken over by some kind of militia to take this kind of extreme stance. Maybe it was all those people banging wooden spoons against pots and pans in the street that went to their heads. Who knows? But whatever the reason is, they are endangering everybody's health completely unnecessarily here, and it's got to come to an end.
I mean, they will say, won't they, that this isn't just about pay, this is about conditions, and they've been concerned about patient safety and the numbers of staff in wards for a very long time. They will say that patients have always been at risk, and this is just the way it is, and this is why they're going out on strike. It's really interesting, Jason, looking ahead to the week that's coming up. On Tuesday, there's going to be a significant meeting, isn't there, between unions and ministers and NHS bosses. That's going to be between many of the unions, not just the RCN. But if an agreement is made there, then the nurses are going to get the money that's been agreed on by the other unions. Do you think if that happens, which it is likely to, the momentum will really be lost for the nurses because they have achieved that 5% pay increase? Will they continue to get the mandate and the ballot to go ahead till Christmas, do you think?
I think you're absolutely right that the nursing unions might find themselves backed into a corner here because there is a break within the union movement. This is no longer a case of all the unions standing up in a united front against the government, because we've now seen a number of other unions representing nurses, representing other NHS staff like ambulance drivers and midwives that has accepted the government pay offer. And so it's no longer the mainstream union position for the RCN to be holding out like this. What they're holding out for, we don't know, because they don't appear to be even willing to sit down at the table. They just want to take more and more extreme, striking measures. And so I really hope, to be honest, that that meeting does go ahead in the way that you describe and does succeed in effectively calling off any future strikes, because this is incredibly dangerous. I just hate to think of all those patients and all those families who will suffer directly as a result of what the RCN are doing. If they really were concerned about patient safety, I don't think that they would be doing this. I don't think you could have a clear conscience to walk out if you're an intensive care nurse or a cancer nurse and say that it was patient safety that was motivating you. Pretty clearly, they just want to squeeze a few extra pounds out of the government, our money, of course, that we're paying through taxes. And so it's just not a situation that the government should give into and set a precedent for future strikes, that this is an okay thing to do, because it really isn't.
Jason, good to get your perspective. Thanks very much indeed. If you've got a view on that, let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk. It's a difficult one. I mean, I think it's all very well for us to take a position, to have a view from a distance. But if you are working in that profession and you are up against the wall, maybe it is different.
Maybe you feel like you've got no choice, you know, and this is your daily existence, seeing shortage of staff on wards, and this is the only way that you feel as though you can highlight it.
Saying that, we've had loads of nurses get in touch yesterday who've been in the profession for donkey's years saying, you know, I disagree with the strikes.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever your view, let us know.
I think it's a third of nurses aren't part of a union. So it's a lot, isn't it?
It's
really?
a lot.
Yeah, it's a big voice. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let's bring you up to speed with other stories that are going on today. And the Prime Minister has slammed selfish saboteurs who force traffic to go slow. Rishi Sunak told The Sun on Sunday that he wants to put a stop to those who use this tactic. Ministers want police to be able to stop slow walkers, but Labour says the government is just chasing headlines.
Ofsted inspectors should hand in their badges, according to the sister of a head who took her own life. Ruth Perry died when her school was downgraded to the lowest possible rating. The school now says Ofsted did not follow the right procedures and is taking the case to court.
Representatives from the nation's faith communities, including leaders from Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim and Buddhist groups, will play an active role in the King's coronation for the first time in history. The Archbishop of Canterbury said the service will be, at foremost, an act of Christian worship, but that new elements will reflect the diversity of modern society.
Now, the last flight out of Khartoum took place last night as nearly 2,000 have been rescued since Tuesday, the final flight taking off overnight.
Well, with the ceasefire ending in tatters, the sounds of airstrikes, artillery and gunfire could be heard across the capital in Sudan as it teeters on the brink of civil war.
Well, let's talk to the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who joins us now. Morning, Robert. Well, I mean, first and foremost, what's your assessment of what we have been able to do in terms of getting people out?
Well, they got it together in the end. I think that's what one must say. I mean, obviously, the execution of the operation was pretty terrific from the rescue of the British embassy staff, but it was a cold start that they came from. There are surely lessons to be learned from this, and they have to be added to the lessons to be learned from the scramble from Afghanistan 2 years ago. We're going to face these emergencies over and again, and we're going to have to do it with allies, because some of the allies were really pretty good. The people that don't normally come to the fore, and it sounds very patronising, I don't mean to be, but the Canadians, the Dutch, were very, very good and very, very fast on the ground. And one hopes that, you know, that we put politics aside. I think it would have to be a general liaison committee done through the UN, which is difficult in view of the fact that Russia is now currently chair of the Security Council, and NATO. But they do help each other out. There was a bit of a handbags at dawn between the Germans and the Brits. But actually, they get on pretty well on the ground. Drawing breath, it obviously looks very, very dangerous indeed, because those people on the ground must have been worried. Was there a point at which they might have to fight? French and Turkish contingents shot at quite seriously. and now civil war. Bombing in the middle of a capital city. And it's going to go on, and we're not finally free because there are still people with British citizenship obligations in there.
I was going to ask you about that, Robert, because our understanding is 1,800, just over 1,800 people, British nationals and their dependents, have been taken out. But there is an understanding there are still thousands of British nationals in Sudan. Is it because that window was so limited, or have those people decided, for whatever reason, to stay?
They couldn't get them out. Just think of Afghanistan and Kabul, where at least, there were patrols because the Taliban had already taken over and they could go and extract people as it's. Still, they left lots of people behind. I think we've got to be much clearer about obligations to people and people that you really want to help. I mean, the thing is that so lately did they decide that people who are working in the NHS here, after all, were eligible to come on British flights and on other flights. It's not the time, as I say, to fight domestic politics here, because these people were extremely valuable. The other thing is that this is just not isolated. It's not something that you can turn the back on, that everything flows through everything. We're still part of a global world. Would you believe it? Ukraine, Taiwan and the tensions there play through Sudan, the Gulf, Somalia, and what's going on now. And yet we hear at this point about how can we help, what international assistance could be brought. And there's a debate in America about withdrawing what troops, and they do have a few, in Somalia from Somalia already. I mean, you can't let Africa burn in both senses because it's suffering terribly from climate change, which is driving a lot of these movements and upheavals. But we seem to have a sort of chronic civil war situation in countries now like Sudan and Somalia, and they don't stay there.
But at what point does it become our business? The one thing surely the international community has learned over the years, that the more we dabble, the worse it gets. I mean, just look at Iraq and, backing Saddam Hussein at one point.
But that was something else, I agree. And I think there was, particularly in the 2003 operation, and let's not go there, but it does seem more and more evidence of a false prospectus that that's where Rumsfeld and Cheney particularly were determined to do it. Quite how, why, where and when, sorry, thank you, Mr. Blair, they didn't really think through well enough. So park that. We are linked. We are going to be affected. There is a movement to the north of Africa. How does that affect us? Yes, it does, directly, indirectly, in so many ways. One of the things that I was just noting here that is absolutely clear, we are going to have to spend more on defence. When you define defence as security and resilience at home and abroad. And Mr. Sunak's government is in no mind to do that at the moment for very, very good reasons, that they have put sums in, not huge sums, but as we were hearing, with nurses, with everything else, preparing for an election, getting inflation down, the money isn't there. But this is a security situation. OK, it's on towards the outer rim, but it is the pebble in the pond, and the ripples go out and go out and go out. And, we've got Russia playing there. We've got a potential standoff between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. If they conflict and clash, we are going to feel that in one way or another, and in our pockets.
OK. Robert, thank you very much indeed.
Sorry to bring you doom and gloom again.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's the nature of it, isn't it, sadly, at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Now, it is back to school for some. If you want lessons on the monarchy, this is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Morning.
Now, she's sat here going, oh, look at this, because it's all about food. I've never known anyone so obsessed with food.
True,
What do you fancy? What's...
Well, Linda's been in touch with her coronation menu, and I thought, wow, I like the sound of all of that. Oh. And it's representative of the United Kingdom.
Oh, very good. Go on.
Which is lovely. So, for starter, they're having creamy, is it Caerphilly cheese, you said? Caerphilly cheese and leek tart.
Oh, see, that sounds nice.
Bloody brilliant. Can I say bloody?
No, not really. No,
Sorry,
I do apologise.
I do apologise for my language. Not allowed to say that. Main is Scottish salmon with vegetables, including Norfolk asparagus. Lovely. So that's Scotland and England ticked off. And dessert is chocolate and Guinness mousse. Oh!
Chocolate and Guinness mousse.
I'd have all of that.
Well,
Linda, it sounds wonderful. And she says, we're going to have a community lunch for the elderly in our area in celebration of the coronation. We've decided to make a dish from each of the 4 nations.
That's a really good idea.
It's a great menu, and I love the idea.
Yeah.
So keep it coming in. Your preparations, your excitement, your plans, let us know. David's got a pin on like you.
Oh, good.
Not that you've got it on today,
No.
but it's planned.
We're wearing a coronation pin badge. And afterwards celebrating in the North Lane, best part of the city. Where's that? Oh, it's in Brighton. Have a great time, David, doing that. Well, it seems like David and Linda would not need coronation lessons. Some people do, though. They are going to be available to all schools in England this week to celebrate and teach students about King Charles's big day.
Yes, the government wants young people to learn about the monarchy, but it's a generation who are mostly disinterested in the institution.
Well, our royal reporter Cameron Walker was given exclusive access to a lesson fit for a king.
The person that is going to wear St Edward's crown on 6th of May 2023 is going to be King Charles.
In less than a week, King Charles will enter Westminster Abbey for an event not seen in this country for 70 years. For Britain's children and indeed their parents, Saturday the 6th of May is the first chance to see St Edward's crown placed on a monarch's head. While more than 3/4 of over 65s want to continue with the monarchy rather than an elected head of state, less than a third of 18 to 24-year-olds agree, according to the latest YouGov poll. The monarchy has a big challenge to engage younger generations, and the government's been looking for an opportunity to celebrate the new reign with Britain's schoolchildren.
Kings of Scotland were crowned at their coronation sitting on the stone of Scone. Describe the stone with your partner. 10 seconds. What shape is it?
GB News has been given exclusive access into a coronation lesson commissioned by the Department for Education, soon to be available in all schools across England. Steve Mastin, a teacher and education consultant, was tasked with designing a lesson simple enough to engage young children.
I don't think you have to be a pro-monarchy teacher to teach a lesson about the coronation, because I think the Department of Education was thinking children should know what's going to happen on May the 6th. Otherwise, it's just a TV programme where a crown gets put on King Charles's head. But of course, it's much, much more than that. It's part of our history that goes back 1,000 years.
The Year 4 class at St Mary's Church of England Primary School in North West London learnt about the special objects they'll see on Saturday.
My favourite object that we learn is the orb because it represents good. My favourite part of the lesson was when we learnt about how King Charles has to hold a sceptre with the orb in both hands. I found out a new word. It's actually a Latin word called corona. It means crown.
Separate material has been made for both primary and secondary schools, and Schools Minister Nick Gibb wants to ensure young people understand the significance of the coronation.
They need to understand really how important it is in terms of the way our country is governed, that the monarchy does play an important part in our constitution, albeit a constitutional monarchy rather than a monarchy with real power. But it's important that they do understand that and all the symbolism that comes from the coronation.
So can I see you holding an orb, please? It's very heavy. Very heavy.
The coronation is multi-generational. 2 future kings will be present, and 9-year-old Prince George will be one of his grandfather's pages. His first glimpse of a crown he'll one day wear. Cameron Walker, GB News.
I think that's really nice, actually.
Me too. We should have some more of that in schools, I think. Not just for a coronation, but I just think to learn about our monarchy and the importance of it is not a bad idea.
I mean, it's a very, very big part of our country,
Yeah.
so why not sort of understand it a bit?
Yeah.
And those kids, that'll stick in their brains
It
at
will.
that age. That'd be very cute.
Very sweet. But it does, polling does show that
What does?
the younger... polling. Polling?
But you said polling.
Polling. I did originally, but it's polling. The younger generation are not as interested in the monarchy, so it's maybe not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. You had a late night, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
About
Not
partying.
intentionally. Not intentionally.
Mind you, not everyone's happy. Dave, morning Dave, says there are millions of us who have absolutely no interest in the forthcoming coronation. It's enough it's costing us 250 million quid. Well, that's according to the Mirror this morning, because it says 150 million has been spent on security on top of what they were expecting. So the total is now 250 million, which is a lot of money. And I get that. You need it to be secure, though.
Yeah.
But also, because it's part of the fabric of our society, whether you like it or not, Dave. And I said, but no, some people don't. But it's worth spending a bit of money on that, isn't it?
And the tourism it brings in, the
it's
boost
huge.
to our economy is huge, isn't it?
I just think it's nice to have something to celebrate.
Yeah, and we need it, don't we, in these times? Something to smile about, something to feel proud about.
Yeah, I think
is lovely,
so.
isn't it? And the build-up, just the national build-up is wonderful, isn't it?
Mind you, and all the flags, if you're going to get flags out, there's loads of flags you can buy and things. I bought mine from my stuff from the Royal British Legion Industries shop. So it's all made by veterans, and then so it's it's all money goes to charity.
It looks wonderful. It's really,
it's great.
Good tip.
It's nice.
Good tip.
Let me. If you're watching on telly, there you go. It's that.
Very
so it goes on a
reasonable.
you can't see it very clearly there, but it goes on a lamppost sort of thing, or gates or railings or anything like that. Only £4.99.
Yeah, very reasonable.
Not bad. But Sean in Leicester says, I'm an ex-serviceman and I always have flags flying. Of course, the Falklands Liberation flag goes up at this time of year, but so will the others, including the VE flag for the 8th of May. And there is more bunting to go up. But your house looks lovely.
And Jackie in Barry says, today I'm going to put up my coronation wreaths, banners and flags in my window and on my door.
Yeah.
She's going to have great setup, Jackie.
Have a nice time.
Yeah.
Why not? We need something to smile about.
Yes, so do send us pictures of all your coronation setups. Is it wreaths, is it banners, is it flags?
Yeah.
Is it pin badges?
Whatever you're doing. I don't know how our set is going to be. Mind you, we don't need to dress our set for this coming week because we've got Buckingham Palace as a backdrop.
We do.
So that'd be very nice.
Yes, it's going to look very patriotic, isn't it?
Anyway, we're going to have a look through Sunday's papers very shortly. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
This is breakfast. Good morning to you. It is 6:35.
Now, as with many of the front pages this morning, the Mail today features this gorgeous photograph of Kate and William as they celebrate 12 years of marriage. And don't they just look so happy?
Yeah, just having a lovely bike ride. Now, we showed you this. This on the left here, this is the picture that was in the Telegraph yesterday. And look at that. The Prince of Wales and in his mugshot.
Is it fair to say that's not a very flattering image?
It's not a very flattering image.
The then Prince of Wales.
But then in the supplement for the Mail on Sunday today, there's another picture of a very young Prince Charles.
Oh.
Looking...
we'll go back to that.
Looking sort of quite handsome.
Yeah. So, yeah.
This is the... oh, there we go.
Yeah. Taken 5 years later, apparently. Look at the difference between those two.
Grown into his looks.
Yeah, must be said.
Grown into his looks. This is... Let's show you guardsmen at the Aldershot Garrison as well, because there's a lot of military stuff. There they are, raising their bare skins. 3 cheers for the King, which will be called at the end of the procession next Saturday. That's in the Sunday Telegraph.
I love that. And apparently we're going to be encouraged to pledge our allegiance.
Oh, yes, we are.
As a nation next Saturday as well.
Yes, which is our first story that we're going to talk about with writer Emma Wolfe and author Ella Whelan, who are both here. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Emma, this is yours. It's in the Mail on Sunday. Swearing our allegiance to the King. Will you be doing that next week?
I don't know. This is a bit odd, this thing about we're all going to... So it used to be that the peers, the lords, would pledge their... It was called the homage to the peers, and it was once reserved just for the lords, and they would have this ceremony at a coronation. Now it's going to be a super inclusive, a sort of people's coronation, and we're all going to be encouraged, a true people's coronation. We're all going to be encouraged, whether we're sitting on our sofas or sort of flinging open our windows and proclaiming to the skies. There's this short thing, I haven't learnt it yet, but it just goes, you know, I pledge allegiance to my king, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering how much people are going to get involved in this and how much they're going to actually want to pledge their allegiance to the king next Saturday. I think there's a lot of public, you know, excitement and support, and I think that's certainly London's kind of hotting up and lots of bunting, lots of flags starting to appear. But I do wonder whether people are actually going to and properly pledge. I mean, the bishops are saying that we say it out loud and we pledge.
I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors according to law, so help me God. Which is actually not dissimilar to what you say when you join the army or whatever.
Yeah, or when you swear on the Bible in court or, you know.
But, you know, why not? I mean, it's a bit unusual, but I sort of quite like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when they play the national anthem here at 6 o'clock, I always feel quite moved. Well, I don't expect to feel moved. I'm not sort of generally into all that.
I don't know, are you going to be swearing your allegiance, Ella? You're not a big royal fan, are you?
To say the least, no, I'm not going to be swearing my allegiance. But I think, I mean, there's something interesting about the way in which this is being framed as a kind of coronation people's pledge of allegiance. It's sort of an oxymoron because, it's using a word like the people's makes it sound a bit populist. And obviously, if you're swearing allegiance to a king, then that's slightly negates that.
But isn't it about bringing the monarchy closer to the people in the 21st century in that sense?
And that's fascinating because the whole reason why the monarchy under the Queen was successful, because it didn't do that, because the whole functioning of the monarchy is that it's meant to be separate. It's meant to be, that I'm paraphrasing terribly from the Walter Bagshot sort of theory around the success of the monarchy, which is all about the sublime and it being this thing that the people look up to, and that's the success of it.
But that's why, presumably, when you look at the popularity of the monarchy, it's waning amongst the young.
I think that the desire to try and make it this sort of quasi-celebrity, slightly kind of, not populist, but sort of opening up a big kind of emotional side to the monarchy. The young royals very much bearing their soul in many ways and taking pictures themselves doing lovely bike rides and things like that. I think actually that the more normal they become, in inverted commas, the more I think people say, well, if you're so normal, then why do I have to doff my cap to you? And I think that it's opened up some interesting questions, let's put it that way, for those of us who might imagine a different British society without, under a different system.
I don't think it's that the royals are unpopular amongst the young. I just think they're kind of irrelevant. A lot of young people just feel, as you say, these people just living completely separated lives from us. They're completely different worlds, living in palaces, just basically utterly living in gilded cages, whereas most young people are struggling to pay rent, get on the housing ladder, get jobs, just struggling with cost of living. So I don't think necessarily people feel anti-monarchy. They just kind of feel that they're not relevant.
But we need a touch of...
They don't live in that deferential society.
But this is understanding what is going on. I mean, one of the big things, and Harry and Meghan were in the book and the series and all the rest of it. And what astounded Oprah Winfrey when she went to visit them in Frogmore was it Frogmore? Was it when they were living in one of the other ones? Anyway, I think it was one of the other cottages.
Nottingham Cottage, not Cot, as they called it.
But she was appalled.
Cottage? I mean, they're not cottages.
No, but she was appalled at the conditions they were living in because it is not remotely great. It's all a bit ramshackle when you get in, and that's the reality. You say they all live in palaces, gilded, but I mean, it's not that gilded. To be fair, some of it's a bit rough.
No, I would disagree with that. I've looked at photos of Frogmore Cottage, and it's not as smart as Kensington Palace, but it's still, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-bedroom house that most of us would not call a cottage. It's still on the Windsor estate. It's still...
Well, it might be. But I mean, Buckingham Palace is falling apart on the inside.
Are Harry and Meghan living or not living a gilded life right now? They're living
they are
on
now, but that's
$1 million estate in Montecito in California.
Yeah, but that's from money they've earned themselves. I mean, from doing nefarious things.
Look at Eugenie and Beatrice. They also have had apartments given to them. They've also had a lot of money through the years that most young people of their age, in their 20s and 30s, we just don't grow up in that world.
They're not being bought houses to live in rent-free, are they?
Exactly.
Near London. I think what is quite interesting about the whole coronation conversation is, I think especially the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, is how intrinsic that sense of belonging and that pride in the royal family is to British people. I think even if you're not a royalist, people have so much respect, don't they, for the work that is done by the royal family. Do you think that's fair?
I think it's fair to say that that did exist in a very real way for the late Queen. But I think it is different under Charles. I think that, in particular, his time as the Prince of Wales, in which he was very vocal on certain, political issues, very interventionist, I think that hangs over him. And, even though he does, obviously he's following protocol and isn't saying the things and meeting the people and doing the kind of things that he could do when he wasn't king. I think it's still there. And if, you know, moving on to my story in The Sun, which is kind of still royal related, which is about Harry's, Flash Harry, his mad dash to the coronation and back.
Very in and out.
Yes.
This is just not an exclusive. This has been known for weeks.
It has been known, but the interesting thing about it was, so basically to tell everyone listening and watching at home, he's essentially going to potentially only be here for 24 hours. He'll be there for the coronation at 11 o'clock, and then it is speculated back in time for his son's birthday in California. And, you know, just talking about the kind of ways in which the royals tie themselves up in knots, a very quick, you know, long-haul flight, mad dash just to come and be in a coronation, you could imagine that causing waves among a younger population of people who are very sort of climate conscious and all that kind of thing. And
you can't win.
But this is it. I think the more that the royals try to make themselves normal and make themselves approachable and accessible, they're going to, you know, when they quite clearly aren't, because very few people in the world fly to the UK for a party and then go back home again. They end up in a kind of between a rock and a hard place, which is that they either are up there as the sublime, untouchable, and not like us at all, and therefore, you know, I suppose you could argue, have some kind of value in terms of what the Queen represented, or they're just like us, and then I shouldn't have to doff my cap to them.
Well, I think the Harry thing, there's a few things going on there. He doesn't want... He's coming to the coronation so that he's at the coronation of his father, but he doesn't want to be in those awkward meetings. He doesn't want to be in the 7th row at the Abbey, pictured, you know, with the surly looks from the other members of the royal family. He doesn't want to be in those very awkward meetings with the rest of the royal family after the publication of his memoir, in which he said some truly vile things. He hasn't been invited to the balcony. As for saying he's dashing back for Archie's 4th birthday, it's just ludicrous. No child, I mean...
Oh, come on. I don't think
I've got a 2-year-old. He doesn't know whether it's his 2nd birthday or whether it's just a wet Monday morning. I think it's ludicrous to pretend that it's a mad rush back for the 4th birthday. It's to get in and out so that he's done the coronation.
You are a harsh woman.
I'm not. I'm being realistic. Harry is in an awkward situation and he just thinks, OK, well, I'll come for the coronation and then I'll get the heck out of Dodge.
To be fair, it's the way that he went on for the Jubilee and the funeral as well. I mean, it was an in and out job, wasn't it?
Yes, I know.
And you know why? Because he doesn't want to be confronted by the others basically giving him the cold shoulder.
That's an absolutely fair point, but however, I think it's a perfectly legitimate excuse to say, well, it's my son's birthday.
No time for people who make a fuss of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th birthdays. Children don't know, Stephen. They don't know whether it's there.
They do. Of course they do if they're being told. And
I don't remember a single one of my birthdays before the age of about 7.
Don't you?
No, I don't remember anything.
I remember my 4th birthday.
Oh, bless.
Do you?
I do.
Aww.
I very much remember turning 5 as well, very specifically, because I thought, oh, I'll never be 4 again.
Oh,
I remember thinking
I
that.
don't remember any of that stuff.
No, well, that's why you're so harsh and cold.
I am cold.
Not to bang the Republican drum, but isn't it interesting that so much of what we talk about in relation to the coronation, even though there's a funny cartoon in the Telegraph, I think it is this morning, with Charles kind of praying that Wills and Harry don't fight until after the coronation. So much of what we talk about is to do with the kind of quasi-celebrity drama of Harry and Meghan, or, you know, William and Harry and their relationships and all the drama of it, which, you know, I love reality TV. I can get behind that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that tells you something about the changing role of the monarchy.
But it's always been that way.
There's not much else to say about the coronation. Great, he's done it. He's, you know, orb, sceptre.
I'm very disappointed in you two this morning. Let's have a look at Ron DeSantis.
We'll try and do better, Stephen.
Yes, Ron DeSantis, who is hoping to be crowned as president at some point. Whether that will happen or not, who knows. But in the Sunday Telegraph, he's very supportive of Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah, well, one wonders how keen Kemi is going to be about this kind of alliance that he's... Anyway, Ron DeSantis, who is the Florida governor and Republican hopeful, as you say, has been over in London, and he met Kemi Badenoch, our sort of no-nonsense, anti-woke business secretary, and he's been complimenting her on her approach to issues about things like gender-neutral toilets and, you know, decolonising the school curriculum and things like that. He's been saying that much of that woke nonsense has been imported from the US. Yeah. And he's also talking about the unique relationship between the UK and the US. And he loves London. He says it's almost like an American city. I'm not sure. I don't know whether that's a compliment.
Oh,
No,
he
don't
says
like the sound of that.
I feel like I'm almost in an American city because we have such a commonality of culture. And he would have supported Brexit. He thinks it's a great idea. So there we go. That's Ron DeSantis for us. Yeah. Adding greatly to, British politics.
Trying to... Well, yes, I've really gone off the idea, the thought of we're American over here. I don't like it at all. We're very British.
I don't agree with that, no.
Thank you very much.
Funny thing to say just before the coronation.
Yeah, it is.
It is a funny thing to say.
No.
Look, we're going to leave it there for the time being, you two, but we will catch up with you a little bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, a number of young people in England unknowingly have high blood pressure, hypertension. That's according to experts, at least.
Well, high blood pressure is responsible for about half of heart attacks and strokes in the UK and can develop at any age.
Well, let's talk to Dr. Tolu Adepeju, who could tell us a little bit more. Good morning, Doctor. Good to have you on. What do we need to look out for in terms of hypertension?
So, things that you need to look out for with hypertension is just, in terms of symptoms, is headaches, dizziness. But these are quite rare symptoms, and they only develop when you have really bad hypertension. It's just thinking about risk factors for developing hypertension. Things like, poor diet that's high in salt, things like lack of exercise, and things like a sedentary lifestyle. So essentially where you don't mobilise very much.
And many people just don't realise, do they, how dangerous untreated high blood pressure can actually be?
I mean, that's very true. It can be very dangerous because it's something that is asymptomatic until it becomes very symptomatic, which is obviously quite worrying. So it means that there aren't a lot of indicators that tells you that it's actually going to happen until it does.
So why do we think more young people are being affected by this?
I mean, in terms of young people, I would say that it's because they don't routinely check the high blood pressure. Because I feel like there's a little bit of a taboo that high blood pressure is older person's disease. And, that is true to an extent in terms of older people are more likely to have hypertension, but then older people are more likely to get regular checkups. Older people are more likely to check their blood pressure to see if they have hypertension, whereas young people don't regularly do it because they're asymptomatic, so they feel like, why would I need to check my high blood pressure? Or why would I need to check my blood pressure, rather?
I mean, it's part of the issue that, if someone's got, slight hypertension for a prolonged period of time in their youth, is that then going to start affecting things like kidney function and what have you, but middle age onwards?
So over a period of time, if you have a sustained high blood pressure, that can then obviously affect your kidneys and other organs. But that's something that happens over a very long period of time. And by that point, you would be symptomatic and you'd, have an indication that, something's not right. You might get like dizzy spells, you might get headaches. There might be indications that might tell you that you do have a high blood pressure.
I mean, the good news, isn't it, is that it is easy to test for and it can be really easy to control as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great news. It's something that one of the very few things in medicine that we actually use lifestyle factors to correct. So we say, go exercise more, we say mobilize more, we say just get a healthier diet, so, less salt in your diet. That's something that you do when you do all these things that can, decrease your hypertension. And we rarely need to use medication for it. It's only when it gets past a certain stage, that's when we start thinking about things like medication to reduce your high blood pressure. And even then, that medication is very effective.
I was going to say, I mean, what do we have nowadays? ACE inhibitors, which, they're very cheap, they don't cost a lot of money, they don't really seem to have a lot of side effects. Are they something which are safe to take on a long-term basis?
Yeah, a lot of people, because when you think about it, over 1 billion people all over the world have hypertension. ACE inhibitor is something that a lot of people do actually take regularly over a period of time, and it is generally safe to take that over a period of time, yeah.
How much does stress feed into this, especially when it comes to young people with high blood pressure?
Stress is one of the most important factors, I'd say, in terms of high blood pressure, because the more stress you have, the more it increases your heart rate, the more pressure you have on your heart, and then obviously that does then cause high blood pressure. Because when you think about high blood pressure, it's just the amount of strength it requires for your heart to pump blood around the rest of your body. And obviously, the more stress you have, you can have like anxiety attacks and have panic attacks, which can obviously over a period of time increase your blood pressure, causing high blood pressure.
Oh well, look, definitely worth getting it checked out.
Yeah.
Tolu, really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. I just think next time you're at the GP, if you haven't got a blood pressure monitor at home, next time you're at the GP, just ask them to check it.
It's easy enough to check, isn't it? And it's easy enough to fix. Really, really good message to have this morning, isn't it?
You've got to be... you don't want to mess about with things like that.
No, certainly don't, especially if you're young. 170,000 people in England.
No.
Under the age of 24 have high blood pressure. It's pretty stark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to be,
Got to watch that one.
See, I get mine checked quite a lot.
Do you?
Well, because I'm always in and out having these checks, yeah.
And you're all good? You don't have high
I'm
blood
all right,
pressure?
yeah, but I do take an ACE inhibitor. But if you're type 1 diabetic, then they bang you on these things all the time. Because actually ACE inhibitors, bizarre, part of the reason they put it on it is because they have this sort of miraculous effect on kidney function. And prevent kidney damage. So they sort of put you on it as a preventative measure.
Oh, I see.
Which is pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, see, I don't think I've ever really had a blood pressure check. They're an odd random one at doctors. I probably should do that.
Yeah, I think
but
you should.
I've learned something today. It's
Because
easy
you're
enough to
classed
get it
as a
checked,
young
isn't it?
person.
Am I?
Probably.
Yeah, hopefully.
At the moment.
Fingers crossed.
Anyway, let's look at coronation stuff, should we? Because Samantha's been in touch. Morning, Samantha. She's going to be celebrating the coronation, she says, in Westminster Abbey, as she's one of the lucky few BME awardees, BEM, British Empire Medal awardees, invited to attend. She got it for her work and support in my local community. Then in the evening, she's heading off to her mum's local club for some drinking and dancing at a Kings and Queens fancy dress party. Bring those pictures back. I wonder because I was busy reading that. I didn't get to see Samantha.
Yeah, let's have a look.
I want to have a look at Samantha. There she is.
I mean, the invite is wonderful for
Fantastic,
starters, yeah. And
there
there's
she
Samantha.
is.
There
well,
she is.
Look at the size of the invite.
It's huge, isn't it? Has she got blown up, or is that just
I tell you what
comes through the door?
Excuse me, I'd get that framed.
Oh,
if
so
I
would
was you.
I. Well, it's a souvenir, isn't it? It's
What
part
a
of history.
fantastic thing.
And are you stood in front of displaying a shop, or is that a home?
No, that's
it's
a
shop,
shop,
isn't it? About to say, you've got a great
But there you
collection
go.
there.
Absolutely, absolutely love it. Well done, you.
Yes, keep the photos coming in. Any sort of flags, bunting, perhaps you're doing a coronation quiche. Do send them in to us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I love the build-up. I love the excitement. Not long to go now.
No, not long to
What
go.
have we got, 5 days? 6 days?
6 days. Oh, it's lovely. It's going to be great. Anyway, we've got all the latest on the nurses' strike coming up. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather forecast from the Met Office. We'll hold on to some showery weather across the UK for the time being, but things will turn drier during the week ahead and there'll be some warm sunshine at times too. The showers are all down to low pressure being located fairly close by to the UK at the moment, but notice a build of pressure as we head into the early part of the coming week, and it's that promises to quieten things down. As for the conditions this morning, well, it's a pretty showery start to the day across many western and northern parts of the UK. Some of the showers on the heavy side, 1 or 2 thunderstorms around too. Those showers start to become more widespread as we go into the afternoon, particularly heavy across Northern Ireland. Here we could see some torrential downpours, I think, whereas the southeast of the UK tends to hold on to the best of the dry and bright weather throughout the day, staying mostly dry, I think, here into the evening. We'll also see the best of the temperatures towards the southeast in that sunshine, climbing into the high teens. Best temperatures around about 18 or 19 degrees. 19 is 66 in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler, though, towards the northeast of Scotland. And as we go into the evening and through the overnight period into the early hours of Monday, those showers tend to transfer their way eastwards across the UK. So some showers developing across the southeast there as we head into the early hours of Monday. Whereas out towards the west and northwest, we'll start to see some clearer spells as those showers start to ease down. But wherever you are, with a fair bit of cloud still lingering there, temperatures holding up in the range 7 to 11 Celsius. As for Bank Holiday Monday, well, a fair few showers still likely across some central and eastern parts of England, 1 or 2 on the heavy side, and a bit of showery rain notice there moving into the far north of the UK too, parts of northern Scotland, seeing a fairly damp day on Monday. But elsewhere it's a quieter picture, less in the way of showers, more in the way of bright weather too, and feeling more comfortable, I think, with temperatures doing fairly well in the bright spells, into the mid to high teens Celsius. Again, we could see a high of 19 or 20 degrees towards the south, but still quite chilly up towards the far north east of Scotland. As for the outlook, well, into Tuesday and Wednesday, pressure starts to rise. We see a bit more in the way of sunshine, certainly on Tuesday, but notice towards the north of the UK there by Wednesday, we could see some more cloud developing. That's it. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
The coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Sunday, April the 30th. Today, sick and tired. Nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services will strike later today, so can patients really be safe? The big day is on the way. Coronation lessons will be available to all schools in England to help youngsters understand the coronation. We were given exclusive access to one of them.
The last rescue flight out of Khartoum as the agreed ceasefire in Sudan expires tonight. With little food, electricity or medication, there are now serious concerns about welfare. And fancy a holiday home on the moon?
Yes.
Yes. Well, scientists at NASA have figured out how to extract oxygen from lunar soil. This is a major boost to the plan of building human bases on the moon. And you would love that.
That is excellent news. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Oh, I do apologise. I've got a frog in my throat this morning.
We both do a little bit.
A little bit. I've caught it. I blame you. Look, what are your plans for the coronation? Because you're running out of time now to get it sorted. Val says, I've just ordered 2 plaques, front and back gate, covered by all of that, going to a street party in Maidstone on Sunday, as my village is a bit quiet. That's a nice thing, of course. You can have a party on Saturday or Sunday, or both.
Or is there a bank holiday next Monday as well?
On the Monday, yes.
Oh, you've got all weekend. It's going to be great. Bet in Dorset says, I was only 6 years old when Queen Elizabeth was crowned. My dad ordered a television, black and white, from Radio Rentals, and several neighbours and their children came in to watch. Sadly, I can't remember much about it, but I will definitely be watching this one, and it will be in colour.
Oh, yeah, colour, high definition, all wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Phil, we're talking about because we're going to be invited by the Archbishop of Canterbury during the service to swear our allegiance to the King.
Yes.
An homage of the people, it's going to be called. Phil says, I proudly swore allegiance to the Queen. I will proudly swear allegiance to the King.
What's the wording of it? Do you remember?
Oh, hold on.
I'm putting it on the spot now.
You are putting me on the spot, but I will try
Oh, I've got
my
it
best.
here.
Oh.
I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty, to your heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
Yes.
Does sound like you're in court, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I will do that.
Yeah?
I will do that. I think it's nice.
So will I.
I want to be... I want to support the King.
Yeah.
And the royal family. I think it's nice.
And there's a message from Lambeth Palace, which is the Archbishop of Canterbury's office, and they're very excited because they're saying it's the first time that online television audiences will be together all around the world and we'll be able to do it all together. They say it's a really uniting moment.
I think so.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Will you be pledging allegiance to the King? Will you be accepting that invitation to do so? GBnews at gbnews.uk.
And lessons, I mean, this is... Now, Peter in Strood, morning Peter, must be very up on his things. He doesn't need lessons on the coronation, but he thinks the rest of us do. He says, I counted at least 2 of our national flags being displayed upside down. Is that in our report or just out and about? I don't know. I've got to be honest. I mean, I know there is a right way and a wrong way. I wouldn't know which is which.
Neither would I.
No.
Is that bad?
No, I can't remember
Sorry,
which way the
Peter.
stripes go. But I wouldn't know. So, Peter, we could do with those lessons. You could clearly teach them, I think.
Do you know, that reminds me, I saw an amazing video the other day. I have to see if I can find it for you. I keep talking about these videos and then... There's, again, another one to make you smile. And it's somebody drawing the Union Jack on a window, and obviously you have to do it kind of back to front. And,
oh, yeah.
And it's a real skill. And it's this lady who's doing it in high streets up and down the country.
Oh, really?
And it's amazing what a skill it is. And she does it in the window, and it's with a white pen, and then she does all the colouring in. And it was amazing. I could have watched it for hours.
Love it.
One of those things that's great to see.
Yes.
And Andrew in Ealing says, to mark this fantastic event, we're going to have a street party to celebrate with our lovely neighbours.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That's nice.
It's all about bringing communities together.
How does a street party work, then? Do you have to delegate who's bringing what dish, or do you all just bring for your own family? How does it work?
I think it depends how you want to do it. A lot of them delegate, don't they? A lot of people delegate. So you do the coronation quiche, I'll do the prawn cocktails, and
the trifle.
Everyone bring their own. Oh, the trifle, obviously. Everyone bring their own bottle.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I'd worry about that. I'd want to know that there was enough sweet and savoury options. You know, if you're having a street party, do let us know. How does that work?
Yeah.
How do you make it work for the menu? gbnews.uk. That's my concern.
It is, yeah, but of course it is. It's to do with food. Now, we're talking about uniting communities and things. Of course, there's not much unison in terms of the NHS at the moment. It's very confusing because Unite and Unison are names of unions as well, of course. That's why they pick it. Now, a fresh wave of NHS strikes starts tonight, despite government demands to call it off.
Yes, members of the Royal College of Nursing will begin industrial action from 8 o'clock tonight until late on Monday, turning down a 5% pay offer.
Well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has more from Nottingham.
The winter in which these strikes began has long ended, and now the Royal College of Nursing's mandate to strike is melting away too, but not quite yet. From 8 o'clock tonight until late on Monday, nurses will join picket lines once again. The union wanted to strike until Tuesday, but the High Court said another day would fall outside of their strike mandate, which is only valid for 6 months. A government pay offer of 5% was rejected by RCN members. Other NHS unions are accepting. Speaking ahead of the strike, the RCN's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, said, "Only negotiations can resolve this, and I urge ministers to reopen formal discussions with the college over pay specifically. Nursing staff are looking for a fair settlement that shows the government values and understands their profession." It seems that more strikes are coming. In Bulwell, Nottingham, it's only a short drive to the Queen's Medical Centre. Muriel, who's 88, knows it well. She just spent 2 weeks there with a bad leg. She praised the nurses who looked after her, but says they were exhausted.
The nurses were very good at the Queen's Medical Centre. They all seemed cheerful enough, but they were that busy. They were here, there and everywhere. They're rushing about all the while. They don't get much break at all while they're there.
Muriel says she will support more strikes, but others in Bulwell are unsure.
I do support the nurses' strike, but then again I don't. I feel for the people that's suffering in hospitals.
I know it's all about money and they all got to live, but I was ill last year and if they'd gone on strike I'd be dead now.
They deserve more money than everybody else. They're more important than anybody else, keeps us all alive, they enough, don't they?
Despite being shorter, the industrial action could be tougher on the NHS. Last time, the union guaranteed cancer care and other exemptions. Now that's gone, aside from some local deals. Health and Social Care Secretary Steve Barclay said, "It is hugely disappointing some unions are escalating strike action this week, including the RCN, despite only a third of its members rejecting the government's fair and reasonable offer on pay, which other unions accepted. Summer is coming, but unresolved, these strikes could last until next winter." Will Hollis, GB News in Nottingham.
Well, we're joined now by Communications Officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim. Good morning to you, Reem. Really good to have you with us. So it's all very confusing, isn't it? We're talking about intensive care going to be affected for the first time. It is, or it sounds like it's a marked step up, doesn't it? But then we're also hearing about some local deals, some exemptions.
Yes, so the RCN are actually some of the highest paid nurses in that union compared to other unions that represent other nurses in the NHS themselves. You're absolutely right. So critical care units will still be at risk. That includes intensive care units, that includes incredibly important aspects of our emergency healthcare services. But unfortunately, of course, these strikes mean that those will be at risk. So there will be some local deals which effectively mean that hopefully there will be some local areas that will still be stocked up, which means that, you know, the impact will be minimised in those local areas. But unfortunately, for those areas that aren't going to be receiving that deal, it means that there is a huge risk that a lot of these intensive care units won't be available for use.
You see, I think public opinion on this is vital, isn't it? And I tell you what, I know we were smiling a little bit because there's one lady in that report who said, I do support the nurses' strike, but on the other hand, I don't. Yeah, but that's actually quite important, isn't it? Because she's obviously, in principle, thinks, yeah, they need more money, they need more support, you know, so they should get it. But what people are running out of patience with is when people are starting to become more ill, when people start to die as a result.
Absolutely, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the political sort of strategy behind these unions is quite important. The way that the political mood, the way that the public feel about the nurses is incredibly important. Previously, we have seen that the polls have shown that people have been pretty supportive of the nurses. I think what we've got to make unequivocally clear is that nurses and doctors and all NHS staff work incredibly hard on the front lines. They do work incredibly hard. And of course, a lot of these nurses, I think, do deserve a pay rise. Now, that's a separate matter. What's really important is where this money's actually going to come from. The RCN are asking for effectively a 19% pay rise, which is just, unreasonable. We don't have the money for that in the NHS.
But are they still asking for that? Because what is confusing now is that the RCN turned around and said the best deal we are going to get is 5% plus 6% in a lump sum for the previous year. Our members, you take it. Now they're going back to the table saying, oh, no, it's really not good enough. So what are they going to ask for?
They are. So because the RCN are actually some of the represent some of the most highest paid nurses across the NHS, they don't want just the lump sum. They also want the percentage, so that percentage is of their entire income as well. What's interesting about this sort of discourse around the NHS and around healthcare services across the world, a lot of people are now saying, well, other European countries pay our nurses better, why can't we? And the answer to that is, well, we have a socialised healthcare system. We pump huge amounts of money into the NHS, and unfortunately we still see these services not working in the same way they are. So they are failing not only the nurses and the doctors, but also patients and the taxpayer. We are spending huge amounts of money on the NHS. I think what we really need to be looking at and actually having this serious conversation about whether or not a lot of our public sector workers are paid enough. Actually, if we look at more free market healthcare systems like the German system, where they have a sort of system of public-private partnerships, like the Swedish system or the Netherlands.
But in what sense, why would staff get paid more in those circumstances? Because one thing you have to take out of that equation then is profit.
Yes, well, a lot of these services actually mean that there's more of that money available. So essentially, it means you as a consumer get to shop around and pick where you get your healthcare services from. I'm not saying this. This is people sort of talk about institutional reform and then say this is the backdoor to privatisation, which is just not true. We look at these services and actually they do have more of this money available to pay their nurses and their doctors and other public services, public sector workers a lot more because it's a more free market healthcare system.
What is so interesting now, Reem, is that the RCN, who was at the forefront of all of this, the largest union, has now become kind of an outlier in this whole debate. And I mean, the midwives accepted 5%, the physiotherapists have, GMB have, and then we're looking ahead to Tuesday now, and that big meeting with the health bosses, with the unions. It looks as though, at this point, that all those other unions are going to agree that pay rise are going to be given out across the board. Well, where does that leave the RCN then? They're going to lose momentum, surely.
They will, and we're already seeing actually other unions now, like the GMB, are sort of resenting the RCN a little bit more because so there's these 14 different unions, and the argument is, of course, especially with every sort of industrial relation dispute, that if they present a united front, that they're more likely to receive a better pay offer for those public sector workers. Now we're seeing the RCN be this complete outlier and actually argue that they want a higher pay rise. They're not accepting the government's pay offer, and unions like the GMB union are just entirely fed up by it. We saw this weekend, I think there was a piece in the Financial Times that essentially looked at this and said these other unions are now just getting pretty fed up by the RCN.
There might be. However, this is democracy.
It is. A democracy means essentially that we're able to negotiate freely, but unfortunately, with the way that our industrial relations laws works at the moment, means that these unions are protected entirely. We are seeing the government now put forward this bill. We haven't spoken about it too much in the news recently, but it does look like it's going ahead, the minimum service level bill. And effectively, that means that a lot of these public sector workers won't be able to strike unless they provide this minimum service.
Yeah,
interesting. Do you think there will be a mandate for strike action until Christmas? What is your prediction with other unions settling for this 5%?
It looks as though if the RCN don't accept this pay deal, the other unions will probably I think, negotiate with them and trying to push them to accept the deal in the first place. If they don't accept the deal, it does look like we might see more of these strikes occur across the summer. When we saw these happen all across the summer last year. The NHS is obviously under a lot more pressure during the winter time, so we're seeing this summer it won't be as much of a huge impact on patients themselves, especially when it comes to those intensive care units, which obviously do take up more space with patients during the winter time, with those patients that catch the flu and that kind of thing. I think that if the RCN don't accept this pay deal, we could be seeing more strikes.
OK. Reem, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much. Let us know what you think. I don't know. I do wonder, I mean, in my ridiculously logical mind, whether, because it's going to have to go out to a new mandate now to say, do we want to continue the strike action? And I wonder if some of these nurses are just going to go, what's the point?
Yeah, do you know what? 5% doesn't seem too bad, they might feel. Yeah.
Maybe, but we shall just have to see. And if you're a nurse, if you've got a view on that, especially would love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the Prime Minister has slammed selfish saboteurs who force traffic to go slow. Rishi Sunak has told The Sun on Sunday that he wants to put a stop to those who use this tactic. Ministers want police to be able to stop slow walkers, but Labour says the government is just chasing headlines.
Ofsted inspectors should hand in their badges, according to the sister of a head teacher who took her own life. Ruth Perry died by suicide when her school was downgraded to the lowest possible rating. The school now claims Ofsted did not follow the right procedures and is taking the case to court.
Buckingham Palace has unveiled the gowns that King Charles will wear for the coronation next weekend. One of the special garments is a gold silk coat trimmed with gold lace. It was originally made for King George's coronation in 1911. Many of the gowns haven't been worn since the Queen's coronation in 1953.
See, I know some people, it really gets the goat of some people who say, well, look at all this fancy stuff, it's all worth a fortune. But it's part of our history and heritage, isn't it? I mean, to wear a gown made for, 1911, stuff that hasn't been then, other stuff that's not been worn since 1953, it's part of our history.
I totally agree.
I just really like it.
No, and I love...
Pomp and ceremony.
I love it. It's what we do best. It's what we do best, pomp and ceremony, and I love it. I can't get enough. It looks incredible as well, doesn't it? It feels so exciting just to see all of these. We're getting more and more detail. It's all ramping up now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
brilliant.
But do you know enough about it all? As Peter in Strood was saying earlier on, he's counted, I don't know whether it's stuff we've shown or just out and about, he's counted at least 2 of our national flags being displayed upside down. We were saying we wouldn't necessarily spot that. So perhaps we do need more coronation lessons. Anyway, they are being made available to all schools in England this week to not only celebrate the coronation, but also teach students about King Charles's big day.
Yeah, because it must be quite confusing to them, really, especially if you're very little. Well, the government wants young people to learn about the monarchy, but it is also a generation who are mostly disinterested in the institution.
Well, our royal reporter Cameron Walker was given exclusive access to a lesson fit for a king.
The person that is going to wear St Edward's crown on 6th of May 2023 is going to be King Charles.
In less than a week, King Charles will enter Westminster Abbey for an event not seen in this country for 70 years. For Britain's children and indeed their parents, Saturday the 6th of May is the first chance to see St Edward's crown placed on a monarch's head. While more than 3/4 of over 65s want to continue with the monarchy, rather than an elected head of state, less than a third of 18 to 24-year-olds agree, according to the latest YouGov poll. The monarchy has a big challenge to engage younger generations, and the government's been looking for an opportunity to celebrate the new reign with Britain's schoolchildren.
Kings of Scotland were crowned at their coronation sitting on the stone of Scone. Describe the stone with your partner. 10 seconds. What shape is it?
GB News has been given exclusive access into a coronation lesson commissioned by the Department for Education, soon to be available in all schools across England. Steve Mastin, a teacher and education consultant, was tasked with designing a lesson simple enough to engage young children.
I don't think you have to be a pro-monarchy teacher to teach a lesson about the coronation, because I think the Department of Education was thinking children should know what's going to happen on May the 6th. Otherwise, it's just a TV programme where a crown gets put on King Charles's head. But of course, it's much, much more than that. It's part of our history that goes back 1,000 years.
The Year 4 class at St Mary's Church of England Primary School in northwest London learnt about the special objects they'll see on Saturday.
My favourite object that we learn is the orb because it represents good. My favourite part of the lesson was when we learnt about how King Charles has to hold a sceptre with the orb in both hands. I found out a new word. It's actually a Latin word called corona. It means crown.
Separate material has been made for both primary and secondary schools, and Schools Minister Nick Gibb wants to ensure young people understand the significance of the coronation.
They need to understand really how important it is in terms of the way our country is governed, that the monarchy does play an important part in our constitution, albeit a constitutional monarchy rather than a monarchy with real power. But it's important that they do understand that and all the symbolism that comes from the coronation.
So can I see you holding an orb, please? It's very heavy. Very heavy.
The coronation is multi-generational. 2 future kings will be present, and 9-year-old Prince George will be one of his grandfather's pages. His first glimpse of a crown he'll one day wear. Cameron Walker, GB News.
I love that little boy saying, I've learnt a new word, corona, which means crown. Yes, it does. No, I think it's lovely, that.
They're very sweet, aren't they? And when they say they like the orb because it represents God. Very, very sweet. What do you make of the coronation lessons? Do you think it's nice that young people in schools are learning about the coronation and King Charles III and this very special day? Let us know what you think.
The only thing I didn't, when it was the funeral, which I just found slightly disappointing, was the fact that, the orb was screwed onto the coffin. It's perfectly understandable, but you sort of think, oh, someone's drilled that. Whatever to make it.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
I didn't like that.
True, actually.
You sort of want them to be perfect, don't you? These
yes,
sort of
you
perfect
do. You
objects,
do.
But that's not very practical.
I did think the funeral, though, was absolutely stunning. I'm sure we're going to see very similar scenes.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
Well, happier ones, but in the sense of the organisation behind it all, it's going to be wonderful, I'm sure. Front page of The Sun on Sunday today is Harry in a hurry. Apparently, Harry is dashing in showing his face and then dashing very quickly out. Apparently, according to the paper, it's because it is Archie's 4th birthday. Well, lots of you are getting in touch on that. Trevor says Harry having to dash off for his son's 4th birthday is utter tosh. Some of us have had to work away to feed our kids, which means missing out on our own kids growing up. What better birthday present would it have been than to bring his son to the coronation?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's all a bit... I mean, I think it's a put it this way, I think it's a reasonable excuse. If you want to be with your child on their birthday, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And he clearly doesn't want to hang about with the family, so not a bad thing. Anyway, look, loads of you have been getting in touch about what you're planning for the coronation. Some exciting stuff we're going to reveal all very shortly. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 7:26. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Loads of you getting in touch about the coronation. The majority all very positive, not all. We'll run through some of the others a little bit later on. Ruth, morning Ruth. I will be celebrating the King's coronation with pride, she says. And Rita and family, So I filled my little laundrette with flags and coronation pictures. Where are you, Rita? That's a laundrette I'd like to pop into.
Oh, yeah. And send
See
some
that?
pictures, Rita.
Festooned with all... I think that's
good
lovely.
word.
Festooned.
Very good word.
Yeah, it's quite good, isn't it?
Yes, we'd like pictures, please. If you've got pictures, if you are putting up the flags this weekend, or the bunting, pictures, please.
Yeah.
Make us smile.
Would just be very, very nice to see.
Yeah.
Lynn in Lincoln says, I'm a huge fan of the Royals. I will never forget the day I stood on a street corner for 2 hours to see the late Queen be driven past me in Stamford while she was visiting Burghley House. That was about 10 years ago. That not only made my day, but I still get warm, smiley feelings whenever I think about her smiling at me. There were lots of others around, but she smiled at me.
That's so nice. How nice is that? And it's that memory and that story that you can just carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think that she did connect with people.
She did.
In that way. And I think, you see, it'd be quite nice to see the King do the same. I think he's come across very well since taking the reins, as it were. And I think he will connect with people. I think he seems very human. From people I know who've met him, say he's very warm, very friendly, very funny.
Oh.
You know, I just think that's...
Like his father.
Like his father.
Yeah. Well, we have seen him, haven't we? He likes a walkabout. He does like a chit-chat, doesn't he? And he so often does it when it's not been planned, which I think does irritate his security somewhat. But he does like to walk about and meet people. You do get that sense that he enjoys it, which is nice.
Plus, although I didn't agree with it being leaked, do you remember? I mean, it was just after he became king and he was touring everywhere. And I think he was up in Scotland or Wales or somewhere. And he had to sign something and the pen was leaking. And Camilla was having to calm him down. Why someone filmed that and leaked it, I'd put it out there, I do not know. But I really liked that because it showed a human side to him. A man who was actually under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. His mother's just died, he's got all this stuff to deal with. And he was getting irritated by a pen. And I liked that because it was very human.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting conversation, isn't it? I mean, Ella was saying in the newspaper review, perhaps, you know, they should be above us. They should be, you know, this blue-blooded, extra special being. Perhaps that's where their power lies. But perhaps their power is actually being human and being something that we can relate to.
Because it changes, doesn't it? I mean, society changes and our views change with it. But will you therefore swear an oath to the King?
Yes, well, Jack in Herne Bay says, yes, most definitely I'll be taking the oath, as I did as a scout, as a special constable and as a constable as well. I'll be very proud to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'll be doing that. I just think it's a nice... Whenever else will I get the opportunity to do that? But it's not for everyone. Catherine says, I will not swear allegiance to Charles. No man is greater than God. Well, no, but it's not suggesting... I have to say, Catherine, he's not suggesting he is on a par with God. Catherine also says £250 million is a disgrace. He's a billionaire. He should pay for his coronation himself. He's not a billionaire. I don't think. He's got a few million.
Yeah.
A few hundred
He's
million,
not doing
probably.
badly.
But it's not a billionaire.
No.
But it's an... I get your point, but it's a national event. It's part of our country, isn't it? So shouldn't we pay for it?
Well, 150 million of that is on security. It's mainly security, which you need, don't you, for national security more than anything else. You don't want anybody else to get, you know, hurt whilst we're celebrating a coronation.
What about all the good stuff? June, I don't quite know where you're coming from on this. Will you please leave him alone and stop delving for things against him? We're certainly not delving for things against him.
I think just for anyone critical, I think that's the message too.
Oh, not us then.
Not
I
us,
feel
we're
critical.
safe, yeah.
The Prince's Trust alone has helped thousands of young, struggling people. I mean, yeah. It's, actually, the Prince's Trust has done some amazing work. And we sort of forget about that. It all just rumbles on in the background, but it just, you know, really, really help people who are struggling. And that's been a great thing.
As does so many of the charities that have royal patronages who will be represented there at the Abbey. 2,000 people will be there. Many of them will be the charities and organisations that are, you know, affiliated to or represented by the royal family and by King Charles III. It'd be great to see them represented.
And a lot of people who've got a BEM, a British Empire Medal, are being represented. Jonathan says, my friend got his BEM after rescuing several colleagues when Miller Hill Barracks was bombed by the IRA. And he got badly burned doing so. I'm happy to see these BAM recipients who've given so much in service can be rewarded with an invite. He's got that he must have got that a long time after the event, Jonathan. And frankly, I would have given him an MBE or an OBE for doing that. But nevertheless, a BEM is still a great honour, and it is lovely that these people can, or at least a selection of them, can take part in the ceremony.
Oh, it's so lovely. Yeah, really, really lovely. I'm so looking forward to it. I do feel as if it's really starting to ramp up now. I think yesterday, with that week to go, it really feels different now.
Kicked it off.
You think?
This is the week.
Yes, it feels like that. And we're getting so much detail in the papers about what we're going to see. We've seen the gowns now, 2 gold gowns with gold lace.
Yes, dating from 1911, last worn in 1911, quite how old they actually are. And we know about, well, the gold coach will be used on the journey back when he's king. They're using a nicer coach on the way there.
Modern coach.
A modern coach with electric windows and aircon
and
proper suspension. Because the gold coach is horrific, apparently.
Yes.
Queen hated it.
Infamously so, yes. Very rickety, apparently. Who knew? And obviously wonderful pictures of the rehearsals as well. We've seen some great pictures, one on the front of the Sunday Telegraph today. Who's this? The guardsmen at the Aldershot Garrison.
Yeah.
3 cheers for the King raising their bearskins there. Yeah. Wonderful pictures. Lots to look forward to. Do send in your pictures of how you're preparing for the coronation. If you're baking, perhaps, send in your pictures.
It's not exactly a dress rehearsal, that one, though, is it? They've got the bearskins, but they won't be wearing those outfits
no, I was
on
about
the day.
To say.
No, that's true. It's all very casual.
Are they heavy, the bearskins?
The bearskins, yeah, they are heavy.
Must be.
Had one in here actually once.
Did you?
Yeah, I tried it on. Actually, it was. I can't remember which group it was, but they were saying because they are actually genuine fur, and they want fake fur, which apparently is exactly
faux fur,
which they won't. Apparently, the government won't swap it.
Why?
I don't know, because I think you should just swap it now. They don't need to be actual.
Well, if they're already on the.
You wouldn't get rid of the ones that are there.
You wouldn't get rid of them, would you?
But when you renew them, you should renew them with fake ones. But they are very heavy and very uncomfortable.
Oh, there you go.
But there you go.
What did it do to your hair?
Ruin the hair.
Oh, I bet it did.
Ruin the hair. The wig nearly came off when I took it off.
Oh dear. Well, do send in your pictures,
please. Got to look after the tube.
Yes, you do, yes.
Anyway, yeah, keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now let's bring you up to speed with all the other stories making the news from this morning's papers. That'll be shortly. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at the front pages this morning. We're starting with this wonderful photo from the Mail on Sunday featuring the gorgeous Kate and William as they celebrate 12 years of marriage. Congratulations to them.
Having a little bike ride.
Yeah, lovely.
Yes. There you go. Now, we're talking yesterday. This picture on the left was from the Telegraph yesterday, and it's Wales, HRH, the Prince of, from 1967, an 18-year-old Charles, looking like he's having a mugshot taken, frankly. But on the You magazine from the Mail on Sunday today, there's a picture of him 5 years later. So what's that make him? 23. He's grown into his looks a little bit there. It's quite a nice picture, actually.
A bit more flattering, isn't it, than the previous photo. Another great photo on the front of the Sunday Telegraph this morning depicts Guardsmen at the Aldershot Garrison rehearsing 3 cheers to the King, which we called for at the end of the procession on Saturday.
Yeah,
lifting their bearskins on high.
Yes, it should be hard to do one-handed, I should think.
I bet, yeah.
Anyway, let's talk
That's why
to...
we need the practice.
Well, exactly. Let's talk to writer and columnist Emma Wolfe and author Ella Whelan, who are both here. Good morning to you both. Emma, let's have a look at the Observer, should we? Criticising the Coast Guard over small boats.
It's a really sad story, actually. It's an Observer investigation, and it does go back to November 2021. Hundreds of migrants were effectively left to their fate. They were sort of abandoned, it seems, as UK Coast Guards ignored many distress calls. It was a tragedy of these small dinghies in really, really awful winter conditions. Around 440 people were just left adrift, and about at least 27 people died. The official evidence has yet to be released, but it does raise very serious concerns over understaffing amongst the Dover Coast Guards and also a lack of vital resources. I think the small boats tragedy, the small boats crisis, has sort of obviously gone off the front pages a little bit, and as the weather gets better, it's not quite such a crisis every day, but it's still an issue, and people are still coming over and facing really appalling conditions, and we haven't really solved the crisis over that Coast Guard and the resourcing and the policing of our borders. So,
Ella, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it's true that a huge amount of work is done by people who that's not necessarily their job, thinking of the RNLI and charities who step in to cover the gaps that the government has left. And we know that whatever you think about the debates about immigration, it's very clear that the process of dealing with small boats still remains completely chaotic. And not only does that endanger people's lives when they're actually out in these boats, but also the way in which they're processed when they get back is, completely inefficient, and it's causing a lot of problems with tensions in communities. So you just wish that the government would get it together and get some kind of plan.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know, looking at it, I wouldn't know where to start, but somebody must do. Someone must have an idea of how to actually get this under control in terms of that processing and all the rest of it, because that's the big issue, actually.
I think it's having it even comes down to something as basic as sort of failures in filing systems.
Yeah.
Which sounds so crass when you're talking about people's lives and a kind of more serious issue, but actually a huge amount, particularly going back to the Windrush scandal and things like that, so much of the mistakes that happened that ruined people's lives was down to emails not being answered, files not being properly put in the right place, and basically it being a completely chaotic department of government. And, you have politicians who say that they care about fixing the small boats crisis, who use, tug on the heartstrings of those of us who think it's awful that people are endangering their lives and dying in the seas, but not actually doing anything concrete to fix that issue.
Let's look at the Observer. Still with the Observer, Ella. Keir Starmer wants a lot of public service reform. Bolder than Blair, he says.
When will he leave Blair alone anyway? Never. But it's quite interesting because this interview's done in the Royal Crown Derby factory in the East Midlands, where Starmer is, the local elections are taking place this coming week, and then obviously we have the coronation, and Starmer is very much making a conscious effort to use, to signal that the Labour Party is interested in tradition, that it's, he likes to look at the commemorative mugs there. There's a lot of there's a lot of signalling going on here. But in terms of the plan for what this, Blair plus plan is, there's very, as you might expect, there's very little meat on the bones. I'm going through this whole article in The Observer, and the only thing related to policy that stands out is their promise that the Labour Party will restore targets for house building that the Conservatives scrapped, pledging 300,000 new houses a year. We know that is a drop in the ocean in terms of the amount of houses that need to, the amount of bricks that need to go into the ground. 300,000 is nowhere near enough to even go anywhere towards solving the housing crisis. But in terms of the NHS, in terms of the economy, the only thing he really says about the economy in this interview is that we need to become world leading in green industry.
Well, we've heard that a million times.
I know, it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you anything about
the NHS is the crucial matter, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's no, Wes Streeting from the Labour Party has made some kind of noises about the potential of changing the system of the NHS and said that we can't keep going the way it's going. But again, that hasn't been fleshed out in any kind of detail. The only other thing that is signalled in this Observer interview with Starmer is that, points out that he says he wants to change the student finance system. Obviously, in 2019, along with many other things, he promised that he would completely cut student fees and remove them altogether. He now tells the Observer that he's not going to quite do that, but that he's looking at options. So, I mean, who knows what the man's going to do? But he's looking at some nice mugs in Derby and talking about Blair again.
It's pretty underwhelming, isn't it? Like, this slogan, it's not the sexiest slogan in the world. Labour will be the party of home ownership. It's not like election winning. So, yeah, as you say, we've got the local elections on Thursday.
Mind you, slogans aren't necessarily a good thing, are they?
No, it just doesn't. It just doesn't feel... Well, again, it just feels underwhelming from Sir Keir Starmer, as usual. And these are the basics. I mean, housing, these are the basics that any government should be willing to take on and tackle. And as you say, not much on the NHS.
No.
Really nothing, not much meat on the bones at all.
It's also interesting, just in relation to the local elections, that Labour's aspirations are quite underwhelming as well. They'd say that they hope that if they got 400 victories, that would be a good start. And, out of the sort of, I think it's around 8,000 that are up for grabs, they're keeping their sort of bar very low at the moment.
Expectation management, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Should we have a look at the Sunday Times and slapping on the sun cream?
Yeah, and this is really important. I mean, I'm hoping that this heralds amazing weather. Apparently May is going to be super, super hot, possibly the hottest on record. Apparently today is going to be 20, 21 degrees. So let's see. But this is a new guidance from the British Association of Dermatologists, so let me say that. And it's urging us to use sun protection 6 months of the year. It's not about the temperature. It's not about a finger test and going, oh, it's hot outside, I need to put on sun cream. It's about the UV index. And we know that, but it's really important because skin cancer is at record levels in this country. 1 in 5 of us will get skin cancer at some point in our lives. So dermatologists are saying from April to September, put on sunscreen every day.
I think that's a good message. I wear it every single day.
Do you?
You have it in your
Wind,
moisturiser.
rain or shine. I have a separate.
You actually put it on.
Yeah, and because it's UV rays.
It's about UV.
If you're outside, you should wear sunscreen.
Especially for fair people. Ella, you're very, very fair. Especially for fair people.
I never wear it.
You should be wearing it every day.
I don't want to belittle skin cancer because that's obviously
No.
very serious and threatens people's lives. I'm not trying to say that, but I've always worked on the policy that I don't care if I look like a handbag when I'm 70.
But it's not about...
I'm dying just for a few more freckles. When I was a teenager, I was awful. I used to use oil and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, really? I wear factor 50.
Nothing, be it a lesson
day.
to the viewers, nothing ever happened to me other than going red. So you're right, sunscreen is important.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I just
and
can't.
it's not about looking like a leather handbag by the age of 70. It's about the actual damage it can do in these melanomas. And
I just can't be bothered.
Yes.
To be honest.
It's sticky.
It's sticky and
I
horrible
know. I don't
and
like that
yucky
clogging feeling. But
Do you wear it?
I do when it's hot, and I, try and put it on my little one. But no, not as much as I should. I just love the feeling of a suntan. You feel so much healthier and happier and summery, don't you?
I fake it till I make it.
But you're never going to make it with factor 50 on.
Well, that's the point.
But
I
you'll
don't want
never get
to.
skin cancer either.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully
but yeah,
not.
sun cream every day. Very easy, people. Very easy to implement.
Take a leaf out of Ellie's book.
Yeah.
If you could just spray, could you get it so you just sort of spray?
Yes,
you could just spray it and then
I'll link
forget
you
about
up.
it.
Don't worry, I'll sort you out.
Because maybe that would be a good idea. But I just can't.
First the fake nails and now the sun cream. I'm getting all the recommendations.
I'm rubbing off on him, aren't I? Yeah.
What do you mean fake nails?
It's the manicure, darling.
I have had a
But they are his
manicure.
own.
Yeah, the
They are
builder's
his own.
nails. The builder's nails.
That's
The
it.
builder's
Builder.
nails.
We've got the same nails.
Builder's
going on.
nails. I'm trying to look after my... Because I'm a nail biter. I'm a terrible nail biter.
Well, they look great now.
So it's stopping me biting my nails.
Sun cream next.
Ladies, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Cutting
Never
edge
ends.
politics here. Yeah.
Never ends.
You're
What have I got
surrounded today. Got an Emma, an Ella, and an Ellie.
It's horrific.
We said
Frankly.
we need
Go
to
home with that headache.
rename him.
I wish I could go to the moon.
Oh yeah.
Leave you all.
Very good. Good segue.
Thank you.
Well, it's one small step for man and potentially one giant leap for mankind.
Yeah, scientists at NASA have found out how to extract oxygen from lunar soil. That's been dubbed a huge step towards humans living on the moon.
Yes, following on from last year's achievement of growing plants in lunar soil, the path is becoming
To becoming
an interplanetary species comes ever closer.
I see. It makes sense
There you
now. Let's talk to our very own interplanetary friend, space and planetary scientist Andy Lound. Andy, good morning to you. Right, talk us through this, because what concerns me slightly is that NASA have done this not with actual lunar soil, but simulated lunar soil. So are we sure it's going to work?
Good morning. Yes, it should be quite good. I mean, the process which is being used, the carbon thermal process, is used constantly on Earth anyway. It's a process we've been using for many decades for different processes. And the idea was to test this process using a simulated lunar soil. We know exactly what's in the lunar soil, or regolith, because we've got samples brought back from the Apollo missions. So we know what its constituents are, mainly various metals. And the idea was to test this type of equipment out in a vacuum chamber to simulate the conditions on the surface of the moon, to see if you could actually extract oxygen from it. And it's I think it's a very exciting process, but I would. The idea is to heat, and what they did was heat a piece of the regolith so it's molten. It's over 1600 degrees using a laser. On the moon, what you would be using a device to direct solar energy onto the regolith to melt it. So they're using a laser in this case. You then pass, in this case, methane over it, you get a reaction where the methane, which is CH4, the carbon is separated and the hydrogen is separated. The carbon becomes solid and goes over the melt, and that causes a reaction which will actually release carbon monoxide. And then you take the oxygen from the carbon monoxide and then you store it. And the process they tried in the vacuum chamber was absolutely incredible. It worked very well indeed. So it should work perfectly well on the surface of the moon with the right type, because the regolith, we know what's constituents in the regolith. So it's a good process that we think can work quite well. And the actual physical test of a piece of kit should be going up next year or perhaps in 2025, where they'll physically do it on the surface of the moon anyway. And this is a big step because...
I was going to say, Andy, for this, because they're looking at it obviously for oxygen for us breathing when we're up there, but also oxygen for fuel to send. Because obviously, if it sends ships from the moon, it's much easier. They need much less fuel because obviously the gravitational pull isn't as strong. But how much is it actually deriving? Because you'd still talk about huge amounts of oxygen that would need to be generated.
You are, and this process actually generates vast quantities of oxygen because it's a relatively simple chemical process. It's well known, well understood on the Earth. I mean, the first real paper on it, I think, was published about 1960, and it's been used on the Earth anyway to do processes, so it's well understood. Interesting enough, it's a process that's used to remove carbon, interesting enough, from the atmosphere, so it has an interesting way of retrieving carbon. So yes, and on the moon, within the soil of the moon, we've actually got enough oxygen trapped in the soil which could support 8 billion population for about 100,000 years. So there is a lot of oxygen up there tied up in the soil, and this process gives you a lot of oxygen for the amount of energy that you actually put in, because a lot of energy is coming from the sun anyway. So that means you're getting essentially free energy from the sun to actually kick off the process to make it work. So yes, this is a very, very practical proposition, and that's why they're getting very excited about it, because suddenly they've got a system that will work to generate the oxygen that they need, both, as you said, for breathing, but also for fuel.
And Andy, the context of all of this is it's all part of the planning, isn't it? All part of the build-up to astronauts returning to the moon in 2025.
Yes, it is, because you're going to have a base on the moon. I mean, that's the point for living there. And you can't keep bringing that oxygen with you. You've got to actually use the natural resources where you can. And this is what's making space science, I think, the most exciting of the sciences, because it's making everybody think of how we can actually use nature in a much better way. So we're not sort of doing very strange things. We're actually utilizing nature in itself in a more efficient and as they would say down here on Earth, in a green way. So it's a much more environmentally friendly way by simply utilizing nature itself. And this is a very good way of doing it, because if you can have oxygen production, then you can have the populations there. Not just, of course, for the moon, but of course, if you want to go to Mars, which would be more difficult because it's much further away, you need to be able to generate oxygen on Mars. And of course, one of the landers on the surface of Mars has already tested out a small version of this to see if you could generate oxygen on the surface of Mars, and that experiment has proved to be successful. So yes, you can. So it looks like we do have a method now for generating the materials that we actually need.
OK, Andy, pack your suitcase, because we'll be off in a couple of years.
Oh, yes,
fingers crossed. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Oh,
it's very
you'd
exciting.
love to go to the moon with Andy.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Right, we've got all your top stories very, very shortly. Loads of views as well. So if you've been emailing us, stay tuned, because we're going to run through loads of those in just a little while after your weather forecast today.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather forecast from the Met Office. We'll hold on to some showery weather across the UK for the time being, but things will turn drier during the week ahead, and there'll be some warm sunshine at times too. The showers are all down to low pressure being located fairly close by to the UK at the moment, but notice a build of pressure as we head into the early part of the coming week, and it's that promises to quieten things down. As for the conditions this morning, well, it's a pretty showery start to the day across many western and northern parts of the UK. Some of the showers on the heavy side, 1 or 2 thunderstorms around too. Those showers start to become more widespread as we go into the afternoon, particularly heavy across Northern Ireland. Here we could see some torrential downpours, I think, whereas the southeast of the UK tends to hold on to the best of the dry and bright weather throughout the day, staying mostly dry, I think, here into the evening. We'll also see the best of the temperatures towards the southeast in that sunshine, climbing into the high teens. Best temperatures around about 18 or 19 degrees. 19 is 66 in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler though towards the northeast of Scotland. And as we go into the evening and through the overnight period into the early hours of Monday, those showers tend to transfer their way eastwards across the UK. So some showers developing across the southeast there as we head into the early hours of Monday. Whereas out towards the west and northwest, we'll start to see some clearer spells as those showers start to ease down. But wherever you are, with a fair bit of cloud still lingering there, temperatures holding up in the range 7 to 11 Celsius. As for Bank Holiday Monday, well, a fair few showers still likely across some central and eastern parts of England, 1 or 2 on the heavy side, and a bit of showery rain notice there moving into the far north of the UK too, parts of northern Scotland, seeing a fairly damp day on Monday. But elsewhere it's a quieter picture, less in the way of showers, more in the way of bright weather too, and feeling more comfortable I think, with temperatures doing fairly well in the bright spells, into the mid to high teens Celsius. Again, we could see a high of 19 or 20 degrees towards the south, but still quite chilly up towards the far north east of Scotland. As for the outlook, well, into Tuesday and Wednesday, pressure starts to rise. We see a bit more in the way of sunshine, certainly on Tuesday, but notice towards the north of the UK there by Wednesday, we could see some more cloud developing. That's it. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
The coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 8 on Sunday, the 30th of April. Today, sick and tired nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services will strike later today. So can patients really be safe? The big day is on the way. Coronation lessons available to all schools in England to help the youngsters understand the coronation. We've been given exclusive access to one of them.
A coronation topper for the post box. We're going to be speaking to someone who made this eye-catching topper entirely by hand, knitted, I believe, a little later on in the show. And the last rescue flight out of Khartoum as the agreed ceasefire in Sudan expires tonight. With little food, electricity or medication, there are now serious concerns about welfare.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I like those coronation toppers.
Yes.
On the post, but
We
I
like them, don't
haven't
we?
seen any in real life yet. I've got to be honest. I know they are popping about all over the place. I just think they were a really nice idea. You need a lot of skill to make them.
Oh, you do, yeah. And do you go out and measure them in the dark of night and then go home and knit? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, do you pop them on in the middle of the night?
Ooh.
That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? Just people just wake up to it.
It's the way my brain works. I like to know how people go about these things.
But what?
I have just seen a picture of our very own Simon Calder, our friend, your friend of
yes.
mine, and he showed a letterbox that had been painted purple.
Oh.
Coronation colour.
Oh, that's
and a bit
quite
of gold
nice.
as well in there as well, I'm being told.
No, there were gold ones for the Olympics.
Oh, right. See, this is a purple one for the coronations. Let us know. Are you seeing things happen to your letterboxes or your post boxes in your local area? If so, do send in a picture. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you have been sending in your wonderful pictures. Julia says, here's my coronation trolley already.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I bought it on Tuesday for £10 from a charity shop. Brilliant.
And you've got the champagne on there already.
And some
fancy
Union
bottle.
Jacks. Yeah, yeah.
Very nice indeed, and it looks like a nice tin of biscuits.
A nice tin of biscuits and some crisps as well. I know exactly where you got those from.
Love a crisp. Jane says Freddie and Flo are coronation ready. They're two. I don't know what sort of dogs they are, but they're gorgeous.
Oh.
Sat on the garden bench, all covered in flags.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Bit of bunting on
Lovely.
the back of that bench as well.
That
And
on a sunny day as well.
Exactly. I hope the weather stays like that next Saturday, right? I hope so. These are photos of my little village sweet shop in north-east Lincolnshire, which is set inside my old cottage that was built in the 1600s. Apparently, Oliver Cromwell passed by as they were building. I don't know who that's from.
That's from Julie.
That's from Julie. Julie. Wow, incredible photos there.
Very nice. It's just all the flags, masses of bunting.
Yeah, a part of history. It's absolutely incredible.
Lovely. And Barbara's been in touch. She's in Hatfield, and this is her house, and wow, that's just lovely. All the bunting streaming from the windows to the garden fence. It's just lovely. I mean, why not mark it? Have a nice little celebration, flags on the fence, the whole shebang. Oh, and I should say, those dogs that we saw before, Flo and Thingamajig, my friend Luke Nash, says they're border terriers, just like his dog Buster. There you go.
Oh, they're so cute.
Buster's a little cutie, actually.
Oh,
to be
but
fair.
do you know what? These pictures and people putting up the flags and the bunting and getting everyone involved, they're going to be in the history books, aren't they? In the textbooks for the kids.
Freddie and Flo, the dogs.
Including
There you go,
Freddie
border
and
terriers. Thanks, Luke, for that.
Keep those pictures coming in. It's brilliant to hear from you. Lots of excitement building out there. And especially if you're seeing letterboxes and post boxes. We want to see that, don't we?
Yes, we do, because we're talking about that a little bit later on.
Yeah, GBnews at gbnews.uk.
Now, there's less excitement to talk about in the actual main stories today, isn't there?
Yeah, unfortunately, because nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services will walk out later today.
Yeah, now, it was meant to be a 48-hour strike. It was cut in half after the High Court ruled that it did actually break ballot rules.
Well, services like intensive care will be affected by the strike for the first time, but life-preserving care will be maintained.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has this report from Nottingham.
The winter in which these strikes began has long ended, and now the Royal College of Nursing's mandate to strike is melting away too, but not quite yet. From 8 o'clock tonight until late on Monday, nurses will join picket lines once again. The union wanted to strike until Tuesday, but the High Court said another day would fall outside of their strike mandate, which is only valid for 6 months. A government pay offer of 5% was rejected by RCN members. Other NHS unions are accepting. Speaking ahead of the strike, the RCN's General Secretary, Pat Cullen, said, "Only negotiations can resolve this, and I urge ministers to reopen formal discussions with the college over pay specifically. Nursing staff are looking for a fair settlement that shows the government values and understands their profession." It seems that more strikes are coming. In Bulwell, Nottingham, it's only a short drive to the Queen's Medical Centre. Muriel, who's 88, knows it well. She just spent 2 weeks there with a bad leg. She praised the nurses who looked after her, but says they were exhausted.
The nurses were very good at the Queen's Medical Centre. They all seemed cheerful enough, but they were that busy. They were here, there and everywhere. They're rushing about all the while. They don't get much break at all while they're there.
Muriel says she will support more strikes, but others in Bulwell are unsure.
I do support the nurses' strike, but then again I don't. I feel for the people that's suffering in hospitals.
I know it's all about money and they all got to live, but I was ill last year and if they'd gone on strike I'd be dead now.
They deserve more money than everybody else. They're more important than anybody else, keeps us all alive enough, don't they?
Despite being shorter, the industrial action could be tougher on the NHS. Last time, the union guaranteed cancer care and other exemptions. Now that's gone, aside from some local deals. Health and Social Care Secretary Steve Barclay said, "It is hugely disappointing some unions are escalating strike action this week, including the RCN, despite only a third of its members rejecting the government's fair and reasonable offer on pay, which other unions accepted. Summer is coming, but unresolved, these strikes could last until next winter." Will Hollis, GB News in Nottingham.
Let's talk to Assistant Editor of Prospect magazine. That's a monthly general interest and politics magazine. Emily Lawford. Good morning to you, Emily. What are we to make of this? Is the government being put in an increasingly hard position, or does it actually have a bit of leverage here?
Good morning. I think this is really sad that it's come to this, to be honest. I think the government has slightly more leverage than in the past. This time, not having a national exemption for critical care does make a difference. But as we just saw, the public are still clearly broadly supportive of the strikes. I've spoken to some nurses who are striking, and they're all quite sad about this. I don't think anyone wanted it to come to this point. And I think a lot of them feel quite offended that a government that calls them heroes then took them to court this week. But as I say, it's a tricky position for everyone involved, and clearly critical care, patient safety is vital, and I really hope none of them are affected by this.
Yeah, I mean, patient safety is vital, but people will be asking today, can patients really be safe when we're talking about half of England's hospitals now, their mental health, half of mental health centres, half of community centres, they're all going to be affected by this. This is significant disruption now. It does feel like a real marked step up in this.
Yeah, it does. No national exemptions for the first time. I don't know. I think it's a real risk, and clearly it's been a tough decision for them to make. And they are allowing local exemptions. But I think, you've also got to look at how, if nurses have been so overworked and understaffed for the past few years, that in itself has been a risk to patient safety anyway. Last year there were 40,000 full-time nurses vacancies in England. If we've got massive, massive gaps like that, I think patient safety has already been at risk for a while.
What would you say to someone like Kevin in Norfolk who's been in touch? Hi, Kevin. He says, my support is dwindling. They already get paid more than the police. Can't they see this action will cripple the NHS? People are running out of patience.
I do understand that, and I empathise with that point of view, because I think the idea of leaving any patient in the NHS without the care they need for a weekend is awful. I don't think nurses are taking this step lightly. I think they feel it's the final straw. If they feel totally overworked and undervalued, I think they felt they have to take this step. I don't think it's a greedy, money-grabbing thing at all. But I do understand. I think this is by far the most contentious strike so far.
And how do you think the RCN, the Royal College of Nursing, how do you think it's looking in all of this now? Because it was really at the front of this debate. It was the face of it, asking for better pay. But now we're seeing them almost becoming the outliers in all of this, where we've got the midwives, the physiotherapists, we've got GMB. They're all accepting this 5%. The RCN are still hanging on in there, asking for more. Do you think it's a good look?
I'm not sure how this will play out for them. I think from what we've just seen, the vox popping just there, it sounded like the public was still broadly supportive. But I think if we see some horror stories this weekend of people being left without care, their popularity may dwindle. I think right now they've got a lot of goodwill from the public post-pandemic. People really support nurses. I wonder. I'm interested to see how support changes.
Yeah. Looking ahead to Tuesday, there's this really important meeting, isn't there, between unions and health bosses. And that 5% deal is going to be put to the unions. It looks as though that's going to be accepted across the board. It's going to be implemented. What do you think will happen then? Surely the RCN are going to lose momentum in this fight.
Yeah, I think that will be a really difficult moment for them. And, even this ballot to strike, it was quite close. It wasn't an overwhelming majority of people voting. I wonder if this might be the end of it now.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of trying to get another mandate together, again, you do wonder whether the RCN... I mean, it's difficult too, because they obviously recommended this deal to their members, but you do wonder whether there will be enough support, enough will to keep this going.
I think if we see a bunch of headlines about more people dying, more people at risk this weekend, I know there are local exemptions, but if we see it get worse, I wonder if they will just run out of steam, if they accept a pay rise or if the government can give them any more. I wonder if it will die down now. Yeah. It feels like they're coming to the end of the road of it.
Yeah, it does a little bit, doesn't it? Emily, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Loads of you getting in touch. Andrea in sunny Suffolk says, I've been a nurse for 30 years, more than 30 years, and I have seen staffing levels eroded. Nurses just don't have the stretch anymore. The minimal service level agreement is how most nurses on busy inpatient areas work on a good day without anyone being on strike. So it's just too stretched at the moment, which, of course, is what a lot of people are saying. Well, I mean, my question to this, and it's because it's all about pay and conditions, but is it actually just all about pay, really, for the people involved? And I'm not necessarily... That's not a criticism, because, you have to think about yourself in your own pocket, don't you? But is it really about the conditions? Is that actually going to change as a result of any of this? I don't know that it is.
Well, pay often just feeds into conditions as well, doesn't it? I mean, if you're paying people well, there'll be more people wanting to come into the industry, and then there'll be better staff. So, I mean, pay is really as you say, the start and end of it for many people. Andy says, please remember that the nurses are not asking for a pay rise. They're asking for their pay to be restored. After 13 years of real terms pay cuts, they're worth 20% less now. Spare a thought, too, for the police and the military, whose real term pay cuts have been even more severe since 2010, and they are unable to strike.
Yeah, and well, again, so we hear this a lot. We hear that a lot from the unions, don't we? It's all about restoring. But the point is, what do you do about what's happened over the past 13, 14 years? Because it's everybody. I mean, every single person, well, bar a few very lucky few, have actually had a real terms pay cut since then. It applies to all of us.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't
Very few people will have had a 11% pay rise, which is what you'd need, wouldn't you, to be in line with inflation?
Yeah. Or, you know...
Most of us are worth less than we were last year.
Oh, yeah.
And the year before that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's not just nurses, is it? It's everybody as far as that goes. John in Nottingham's says, and I sympathise with this, it would make absolutely no difference whatsoever if our local doctor's surgery staff went on strike. You can't see a doctor, you can't see a nurse, you can't make an appointment. Not fit for purpose. What worries me about this is, not to criticise because my GP's been actually pretty good. They've got an online system and you send them a message and then you get a message back within about half an hour.
Oh, really?
Sort of saying, oh, well, the doctor may speak to you, or can you send a picture in, or a nurse will ring you up, or whatever. And then if they need to see you, they'll make you an appointment.
That's very modern.
It's very modern.
Is it working well?
Well, it's worked for me. I know I float to the top of the list, being a diabetic, type 1. So you do get seen a bit more urgently. However, it does seem to work. Yet I know for other people, and my parents and things, it's a much more problematic process. So I don't know why they haven't... I know they're all, in effect, private practices now, the way they're run. It's a different structure. But why can't they implement a really good system for everybody? So there is none of this ringing up at... Well, you can still do it, but you don't have to ring up at 8 o'clock in the morning or queue outside the surgery. Or
it's awful, isn't it?
All that sort of thing, which is soul-destroying.
Oh, it is.
So this is a much better system. So why is it just not everywhere?
Do we just need to modernise, then?
I think it could be a big answer.
I think so. Could be.
It's like a very quick triage, almost. I don't know who sees the messages, but you do get a reply very quickly.
Yeah. Maybe that's the way forward. Let us know what you think. gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Now, it is 17 minutes past 8 and the Prime Minister has slammed selfish saboteurs who force traffic to go slow. Rishi Sunak told The Sun on Sunday he wants to put a stop to those who use this sort of tactic. Ministers want police to be able to stop slow walkers, but Labour says the government is just chasing headlines.
Ofsted inspectors should hand in their badges. That's according to the sister of a head teacher who took her own life. Ruth Perry died by suicide when her school was downgraded to the lowest possible rating. The school now claims Ofsted did not follow the right procedures and is taking the case to court.
The Palace has unveiled the gowns that King Charles will wear for the coronation on Saturday. One is a gold silk coat trimmed with gold lace, originally made for King George's coronation in 1911. Many of the gowns haven't been worn since the Queen's coronation in 1953.
Lots of you get in touch on the coronation, so we will bring that to you shortly. We'll do that later, shall we?
We'll do it a little bit later.
But do keep them coming in. gbnews@gbnews.uk. Lots of excitement building out there. That's sure. Keep the photos coming in, especially of bunting, flags, letterboxes, postboxes.
Anything you've got going on. Very nice to see. Now, let's tell you about the last flight out of Khartoum, which took place last night. Well, the last British flight, at least, took place last night as nearly 2,000 people were rescued from Sudan. The final flight took off, we believe, about 10 o'clock.
Well, with the ceasefire ending in tatters, the sound of airstrikes, artillery and gunfire could be heard across the capital as Sudan now teeters on the brink of civil war.
Let's talk to the Defence and Foreign Affairs editor from The Telegraph, Con Coughlin, who joins us now. Con, really good to see you this morning. First and foremost, what do we make of the rescue operation? Because although it's been a heroic effort from those involved, there's still a lot of people left behind.
Yeah, well, I think the government's finally achieved its objectives. I think a lot of people were concerned at how long it took to get the evacuation operation up and running. And of course, one of the big problems they had was trying to find out exactly who is in Khartoum and where. But that's all been accomplished. And I think the latest figures is that about 2,000 British citizens have been evacuated. There was that last minute issue about NHS doctors who are Sudanese and don't have British passports, whether they would be entitled to be evacuated. They're out now. So, and as I imagine, those that have left, I mean, there have been enough warnings about the situation in Sudan. Those that have remained feel that they are able to withstand what is going on in the country.
But for the thousands of people who are left in the country, especially British nationals, I mean, it's very, very dangerous conditions on the ground. I mean, we're hearing of a lack of food, water and fuel.
Well, the situation on the ground is horrendous. And, I mean, there are some people who know this area very well are warning that, if we're not careful, this could become another Libya or Syria in terms of the scale of the conflict. And both sides seem very entrenched, very determined to achieve their goals through feat of arms. And in such circumstances, this has the potential to rumble on for some time.
We were talking to Robert Fox earlier on, Con, and he was saying, it's what the international community does next. I mean, do we try to intervene? Heck, we're stretched enough at the moment, but do we try to intervene, or do you just let Africa burn?
Well, I mean, I've been looking into this, as you would imagine, and I think the solution really is an African solution. I mean, the African continent has various mechanisms and organisations that can be deployed, certainly to enforce a ceasefire. And we saw that during the conflict in Darfur. We've seen it in other conflicts. The Saudis have also been playing a very prominent role, and that there's a possibility that some of the other neighbouring states, Egypt, etc., might want to get involved and try and, at the very least, establish a ceasefire. But as I said, these two groups, the Sudanese military, which controls the junta that's been in power since 2019, and the Rapid Support Forces, the rebel group, if you like, are both determined to get their way through the military. And they have outside backers. Most notably, the RSF seems to be backed by the Russian Wagner group, which is giving it arms. So, as I said, this has the potential to escalate into a far bigger conflict than we have now.
Well, can I just ask, what do we read into the involvement of the Wagner group, which, of course, seems to be working primarily for the Kremlin at the moment? I mean, is there something more sinister going on there or not?
The answer is yes. The Wagner group is Putin's personal army. I mean, there's no doubt about this. It does Putin's dirty work, and it's been doing Putin's dirty work for nearly a decade. And we saw the Wagner group in Syria trying to keep the Assad regime in power. It's been active in Libya, trying to get Russia a toehold in North Africa. And now it's emerged, it's very active in Sudan. And what the Wagner group in particular has been doing in Sudan is helping the RSF, the rebel group, to gain access to the gold mines. And there have been reports of gold being flown from Sudan to Russia via Russian bases in the Mediterranean. And that gold is being used to fund the war in Ukraine. So it's a very complicated picture. But basically, wherever you find the Wagner group, you invariably find trouble.
I mean, you touched there on Sudan being rich in gold. It's also critical in terms of its position geographically, isn't it? I mean, the chaos in Sudan does have geopolitical consequences, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does. And you'll have seen that one of the main evacuation routes has been through Port Sudan. And Port Sudan is in the Red Sea. The Red Sea is one of the world's biggest trade arteries leading up to the Suez Canal, etc. And one of the other more ominous issues is the Russians are trying to negotiate with the Sudanese government to establish a naval base in Port Sudan. That agreement was reached when the former dictator Omar al-Bashir was in power. It's been in abeyance since then because there's no proper government. But I understand the RSF has said if they win this war, then they will allow the Russians to proceed with building their naval base, which will give the Russians their first proper base in that area and the ability to disrupt trade if they so chose to do. So, the geopolitical implications of this are pretty dire.
Yeah, no, it's certainly worrying. Con Cochran, as always, really good to see you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's why you need to talk to people who really know what's going on. I mean, Con is unbelievable in what he knows. Fantastic.
Really, really good to have
Worrying,
that analysis.
but,
It is.
On to cheerier matters. Oh, no, we were talking about this homage of the people to the king. Now, there is what you're saying, I'm going to do it, and I think it's a nice thing to do. There is one part which I read which does... I just think it's odd. It doesn't worry me. I just think it's really odd.
OK.
So we say, I swear I pay true allegiance to your majesty, to your heirs and successors according to law, so help me God. The Archbishop of Canterbury will say, God save the king. And then we're all meant to say, God save King Charles, long live King Charles, may the king live forever. And is that a traditional thing that normally in the peers' homage that they say, may the king or queen live forever? Maybe it is, I don't know. I just think that's a bit weird, isn't it? Because obviously the king is not going to live forever.
No.
So I just find that a bit weird.
No, I agree with you on that. Oh, it's on the front page, actually.
It is, yeah.
People. Yeah, maybe.
That's what caught my eye.
Well, very good. No, yes.
That's a bit weird, I think.
I wonder if that's historically been done.
Must be.
Must be.
Must be. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't have it taken out, really, because the man's a realist. So I don't know. Mike, though, is going to... it doesn't need to swear allegiance, because he's already done it. I'm ready for the coronation of our king. I swore my allegiance to our late queen when I joined the forces, and it stays the same for King Charles, because it does, because you swear to allegiance to his heirs and successors.
Lots talked today about the cost of the coronation, £250 million, reportedly. 150 million of that will be on security. Richard said... I've read the coronation will bring £1 billion to the British economy. Maybe you remind the owners of that.
Yeah, well, it will. I mean, it will bring in a lot of money. It's not a bad profit, not a bad markup.
Not bad at all. And ultimately, that is one of the best things about the royal family, is what they can bring into our country and the amount of tourism that comes, especially to London, to visit all of those palaces. It brings a lot to our economy, it must be said.
There are a lot of people who, a fair number of you got in saying you don't really support the royals, you don't want to see all of this. Well, and that's a perfectly valid point. However, Sian maybe has got an answer for you. He says, I'm sure our beautiful late Queen will be watching and smiling, and I'm proud of King Charles. These are iconic moments in British history, and we're living it like our ancestors. That's the thing, we've become part of the history books, don't we, with this?
Yep.
You often sort of wonder what it was like at the coronation. Well, now we've got one. So I think that's a really good point, Sian. I really like that.
Soak it all up. Yeah, really good point. And Johnny says the doubters in this UK need to look at the rest of the world and be thankful that our country stands head and shoulders above most countries purely because of our democracy and our monarchy.
And Dawn says, unfortunately, I'll not be able to celebrate the coronation with anyone as I have COVID. Absolutely gutted. Hope you feel better soon, Dawn. Hope it's got... Keep testing. If you've got any of those lateral flow thingies still hanging about, keep testing.
Yeah.
And perhaps by Saturday, you'll be free and clear.
I was about to say, you could be quite well by then, Dawn.
It could be.
Depends how you're feeling, but wishing you better.
Were you a girl guide or anything?
I was, yes.
Did you have an oath you had to say?
I couldn't do it now, put me on the spot. But yes, we did. Yes.
Because I did as a Cub Scout.
Oh, were you?
I promised to do my best, to do my duty to God and to the Queen, to help other people and to keep the Cub Scout law.
Oh. I think I was the same, actually, but Brownie Guide law.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, well, how do you remember that?
I don't know. It's just embedded in my brain.
Oh.
I don't know.
You've got a very good memory.
I'm still friends with Arcala.
Who's Arcala?
Dave Reynolds. Oh, that's the Cub leader. It's called Arcala.
Oh.
Yeah, morning, Dave.
Oh.
He's a really nice man. I saw him just before my wedding last year, and it was really nice to have a catch-up.
Oh, well, isn't that lovely? Well, you've got a very good memory. Very good Club Scout.
It's great being a Cub. Blooming brilliant. It's really good. I was in Cubs and Boys Brigade.
Were you? Yeah. Oh, that's very cute.
No, I was cute.
Yeah, you were.
Long time ago.
I bet you were. I was Brownie and a guide. It was very good. Good memories.
Good.
Yeah.
Right, our memories might be good, not as good as Aidan McGee's, though, who's got an eidetic memory, which is terrifying. We'll talk to him very shortly. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You happy with that? Yeah. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Time for the sport now with Aidan. Morning to you.
Morning, good to be with you.
Yeah, now, yesterday we were talking about Man U takeover, right? And we thought the Qataris were doling out more dosh, potentially.
Well, we didn't. The problem was that we didn't really know much detail about the Ineos bid via Sir James Ratcliffe, who, born in Failsworth near Manchester, United fan from birth, apparently, but also tried to buy Chelsea last year, we should mention. But it's emerged last night, sketchy details, but technically his bid values Manchester United higher than the Qataris. So 51% he would acquire. That would keep the Glazers in the club at 20%. But his bid is worth £3 billion. So half the club technically values it at £6 billion. The Qataris are saying at a briefing that actually it's not true, because we want to pay £5 billion up front.
For all of it.
For all of it, but we're also pledging £1 billion to upgrade the stadium and training ground. We're going to...
Yeah, but that doesn't affect the shareholders, does it? And that's all.
Well, it doesn't go direct. It doesn't go direct to the sellers. That's the issue.
That's the issue. Yeah.
But my understanding, and I spoke to someone at length about this on Friday, who had knowledge of the bid, and he said that this is all a bluff. This is all to get the Qataris to increase their bid.
Oh, really?
So the Qataris said on Friday evening, they said, "This is our final offer. I don't think it will be their final offer because I think they want Manchester United that much. It's hugely prestigious. It would eclipse what they've got with Paris Saint-Germain. And that's why, even at this stage, this is the most expensive sporting franchise, if we want to use that horrible word, in the world. You know, we saw the one in Washington, the NFL, going through at the moment 4.8 billion. This at the moment is valued at 5. Ratcliffe's bid values it technically at 6, but I think it could go even higher than that. Perhaps the Glazers' valuation of close to £8 billion might be realised in the end. But the whole point of putting this, I mean, when Chelsea was taken over in 2003 by Abramovich, no one knew about it. It was done, and we only knew about it when it was announced. I was working at Agence France Presse, and I was one of the people who knew who he was because I covered business stories. I knew Abramovich through Sibneft, but he wasn't known to the football community, and it was done overnight. This has been done differently. They put the club up for sale in November. That's not really the traditional way to do things in football. It's mostly done behind the curtain. But they wanted to create a bidding war, and that's exactly what they've got. 6 months down the line, we're still going through this process. We're still having deadlines for final bids, and still we're no closer to getting a resolution as to the ownership of Manchester United, which, as we say, is the biggest club in the country. No
Putting
doubt
it up for sale, you can't help but think there's little signs swinging in the breeze at Old Trafford. You'd want to be the agent on that one, think of the commission.
I know. Well, this is the Rain Group, the merchant bankers doing the sale, same as who sold Chelsea last year. And I think that's partly what piqued their interest last year when Chelsea went for 2.5 billion. And Chelsea isn't the stature of Manchester United historically, but also we have to consider that the club, Man United, have got an extremely rich body of work going back to the 60s. They've won trophies throughout their time, and that's why it's so valuable. But the reason they want out, probably the same reason Liverpool owners are considering extra investment, is that the cost of borrowing has gone up, and so the cost of greasing the wheels at Man United from a week-to-week basis has probably gone up 15-20% just in a year.
Yeah. Should we look at the Premier League?
Yes.
Happy news for Brighton.
Oh, goodness me, yeah. My brother and his nephew were entertained down there in the boardroom last night, and they saw 6 goals for Brighton. His photo taken with a few Brighton players as well. 2 goals each for 3 different players.
Right.
Wolves were literally thrown to the Wolves 6-0. And Brighton, this is good for Brighton because last Sunday they suffered the agony of losing to United on a penalty shootout at Wembley. They then had to go 3 days later up to Nottingham Forest, and they lost 3-1. To come back like this and reaffirm their credentials for the Europa League, this could be the most successful season in the club's history if they get into Europe. That's an extraordinary thing. They were playing at a rundown athletic stadium 15 years ago. They played in Gillingham for 2 years because they didn't have a ground. They've rebuilt that club from the ground with the generosity of their chairman, Tony Bloom, who's a lifelong Brighton fan, made his money through gambling. And they're well on their way to securing, as I say, the best season in their history. Crystal Palace, Roy's had it again. He's had it again. 4-3. He's managed 6 games in the Premier League this season. He's won 4 matches. Frank Lampard at 2 clubs has managed 23 games and he's managed 3 wins.
Yeah.
So now this talk, as I said yesterday...
Well, 4 wins and a draw for Roy.
4 wins and a draw, yeah. So 4 wins, so he's taken 13 points out of 18. Palace are safe now. It was a dramatic win yesterday, but again, what did I say yesterday? You win enough games, suddenly people start saying, well, you can't get rid of him now.
Yeah.
Palace have admitted or sort of hinted that there will be a role for him next season, even if it's not manager. But goodness me, 4 games to go, Stephen. You win 2 or 3 of those, then you can't get rid of somebody who's winning a number of games.
No, he's
great for them. Forest lost at Brentford yesterday. Martin Daubney won't be happy because he had money on that one. And we've got Liverpool versus Tottenham today. We've got Fulham against Man City. Arsenal banking on Fulham beating City, but I just don't see it happening.
Let's have a quick look at the snooker, should we? Because we had all eyes on this prodigy yesterday.
He lost his nerve. He was in the final. He's in the semi-final against Luca Brazil, highly talented Belgian, 28 years old, world number 10, and the Belgian bullet is known as, he just rattled off 11 frames to see him home to the final against Mark Selby, who won the other semi against Mark Allen by 17 frames to 15. Now, Brazil's interesting because he made his debut at the Crucible in 2012. He hadn't actually won a match at the Crucible prior to this year. So he's somebody who, you see it in sport quite often. Sometimes you get late bloomers, late developers, the penny drops sometimes.
Yeah.
He described his tournament preparation prior to this year's Worlds as, before the tournament, I was just out partying, staying up late until 6 or 7 in the morning, playing FIFA with my friends, having drinks and not practising. Oh. That's where he was at. So he's had to practice a lot more, he's had to make changes to his lifestyle, but he's got a real chance of upsetting Mark Selby, although we should say Mark Selby's won 4 world titles. The last one was in 2021. He wins today, that puts him on 5 world titles. Don't forget Stephen Hendry is out in front with Ronnie O'Sullivan on 7, Steve Davis on 6, so it'll be really exalted company if he can do that. And the final goes over the Sunday and the Monday into the bank holiday, and it gives us a chance to move on from Just Stop Oil.
Yes, it does. It does. Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
Good to see you this weekend.
Thanks,
and good to see you too.
Now, we're going to be bringing you up to date very shortly with everything you need to know from Sunday's papers. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, let's show you a gorgeous picture, should we, this morning. It's Catherine and William, the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's on the front of the Mail on Sunday this morning as they celebrate their 12th anniversary.
And they look very happy, don't they? Very relaxed.
They do look very
together.
happy. They seem to fit in well with each other, don't they?
Yeah, lovely. And speaking of the royals, yesterday we showed you this photograph on the left. It was in the Telegraph, and we did say it looked a bit like a mugshot, didn't it? It was a black and white photo with Wales, HRH, the Prince of, written underneath. But today in the U magazine, which is the Daily Mail, I believe, the Mail on Sunday, in the U magazine, this is a photo taken 5 years later. Look at the difference.
The boy who would be ... it says. I mean, why they couldn't write King in, I don't know. They wouldn't have ink. I don't know. Let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph this morning. And in preparation for the coronation, Guardsmen at Aldershot rehearsing 3 cheers for the King, which will be called at the end of the procession on Saturday.
Well, joining us this morning to go through the papers is the columnist Emma Wolfe alongside author Ella Whelan. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
And Emma, let's start with you, shall we? Cold calls going to be banned?
Well, here's a question. Do you answer your phone? If it rings and you don't know the number, or it's a private call or a private number or something like that, do you answer it?
Never.
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, well, you never know who it might be.
I don't.
You never know. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't have a house phone anymore.
Exactly.
Do you not?
No landline.
No landline?
No, don't have a landline. Anyway, Rishi Sunak is going to announce new plans to ban all cold calls that cheat people out of their money. So it used to be that we do have a ban on pension products, but anything now, fake investments, cryptocurrency, all of that kind of thing is going to be banned. I've heard this a few times, and I'm wondering how you can actually control these companies, because they seem to wheedle their way in. People get hold of your number in the most odd ways. So many times I've said to people who cold call, please, can you remove my number from your system? I don't know why you're ringing. I don't want, double glazing or whatever. And then you get repeat calls. So Rishi Sunak is saying scammers devastate lives. He's saying that they prey on people's fears to cheat them out of their money. And these are new government plans. And up to 41 million people in the UK last summer were receiving suspicious calls and text messages. So we do need action on this.
Yeah. It's the text messages, I think, I'm more bothered about in a way, because they're sometimes more convincing. Or this whole, mum, call me, I need your help messages that are doing the rounds at the minute. I think they're easier to fall for.
There were some really serious ones at one point that looked incredibly legitimate from Royal Mail about picking up parcels. I very nearly got conned by them. And it's unfortunately, it's the kind of thing that an older generation who aren't as tech savvy might get caught up with. But also there's, I remember working at a call centre when I was younger, living in Brighton, and it's such a miserable existence, and you can feel a lot of these, there's a difference between the call centre and the scammers, but a lot of them, sometimes I entertain them by just saying, going along with it for a little bit and then just taking the mick a little bit and saying, what are you really getting out of this? Because it's such a low way to try and get money.
It's just such a worry that they're so sophisticated, and they can be so sophisticated now. I mean, especially for people who aren't as tech savvy, it's really difficult to know, what's real and could be a scam. Top tip for you though, because I saw this the other day. Again, I had an email scam, and it looked really sophisticated. I think it was Royal Mail. Something about a parcel. If you click on who sent it to you, click on their actual name. And it said Royal Mail. I clicked on it, and then it came up with the actual email address, and it's 12345 whatever it is, and it's all odd numbers, and then you know for sure it's a scam.
It's also problematic,
That's a good tip for you.
Even doing that is problematic, because sometimes when you open up, it can then infect. The technology now. Yeah. Even clicking on the email can then infect your devices.
Yeah, don't click on the email. Click on their name, and it will show you their real email. It's just a tip there.
No, you've got to be careful.
You do.
To the Observer, Ella, looking at social media and Andrew Tate and all this sort of thing.
Well, yeah, it is a bit tiresome, isn't it? But it's this kind of interesting story in the Observer. They've spoken to a head of a charity called Diversify, which is based in Rotherham and works with schools on issues like inclusion. And anyway, this charity head is claiming that she's spoken to school leaders who've been advised by the Department for Education to, when Andrew Tate or these kind of social media influencers come up in the classroom, to simply tell kids that we don't want to talk about it, to just ice it out, basically, to say, be quiet, we're not talking about it. And she thinks this is a terrible thing, and that actually we need to have, there's been a suggestion that head teachers need to formulate actual lessons and do lesson planning around Andrew Tate in order to combat what is, described here as a kind of an epidemic of misogyny in schools informed by Andrew Tate. I think probably there's something of a middle ground here, a sensible middle ground, which is to say, it seems to me quite easy to communicate to young men that Andrew Tate might be interesting to them in some ways, because he does talk about a lot of sort of bodybuilding, confidence boosting, all these things that aren't necessarily negative, but that he's, fundamentally an idiot who has very idiotic views about women. And that's a conversation that you can easily have with young men who are not dinosaurs and are not monsters.
No.
You can communicate with them, but also at the same time, the idea that we will be taking up precious school time with lessons on this guy fills me full of horror as well. So I think, you know, that it's just interesting that he's captured such a kind of, that he has become such a panic point at schools. And I think a lot of parents are probably wondering why it's become such a phenomenon when there have been social media influencers like him before, and boys aren't necessarily, they're not kind of not walls. We can talk to them, we can communicate with them. I think a lot of the time, we treat young men like these sort of out of reach little monsters that need
It's
to be
very
in the
odd, though, because
hothouse.
if you look at his Twitter feed and all the rest of it, that he's got a messiah complex, this fella.
Oh,
it's extraordinary.
He's completely deluded. He's you know, but the interesting thing, and I remember listening to a young man on a radio programme talking about this, is that the thing that resonates with young guys isn't the stuff about women making me sandwiches. I think most young men know that that's stupid. But it's that this whole kind of, you can be a real man, you can have confidence, and you have to ask the question, why aren't we giving that to young men in a positive way ourselves? Why are they turning to this online weirdo to find their kind of feel-good factor? And I think that's probably something that schools don't need to dedicate lessons to, but maybe we could think about.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point.
Maybe it starts at home as well. Emma, let's have a look at Ed Sheeran, shall we? He's been in court.
A slightly better role model, I think. I'm always surprised at how much I like Ed Sheeran's songs. I sort of don't think I do, and then you hear a few and you think, oh, actually, he's brilliant. Anyway, poor Ed Sheeran, back in court again. He's been back in court again on another copyright infringement case.
This keeps happening. He keeps getting cleared.
It does, because he's overwhelmingly popular. So he's quite vulnerable to this kind of suing, this kind of legal action. He's been back in court, this time Thinking Out Loud, the ballad. It's such a shame we don't have it. But anyway, Thinking Out Loud is apparently too similar to the Marvin Gaye song Let's Get It On. I'm not going to sing either. But when you hear them together, you can hear the similarities, but also songs are songs. There are only a limited number of chord sequences, chord progressions. You know, you can't reinvent the musical kind of wheel. Anyway, the cool thing about this, Ed Sheeran actually, he sings and he plays the guitar in court. I didn't know that. To demonstrate his point.
Right.
That's kind of his way of explaining what he's doing. And I just think it must be fascinating to see that kind of musical, you know, mind at work when he's explaining it. As I say, he's quite prone to sort of having legal action taken against him. This has happened before. But this time it's let's get it on.
It's interesting to think about, you know, the whole notion of copyright in terms of anything artistic, or particularly pop music. Everything influences it and plays off something else. You know, it's very rare that you get something that's completely and utterly original. Most things are influenced by each other in the same way that paintings are, in the same way that books are. And I suppose it's quite clear if you're completely ripping someone off and literally using the exact same tune. But I find it hard to accept that you could have a kind of a copyright on a sound. Because
on a chord
sequence, because surely that just limits the, you know, isn't it a kind of form of flattery, actually, that you're influencing other people? And it's hardly like Marvin Gaye, sure.
No, well, this is it. I
it's the estate and the songwriter who are suing him.
It just seems very strange to me that because they're only limited. There's loads of songs you think, oh, that sounds a bit like. Doesn't mean they've actually copied it.
It is quite depressing, though. I mean, in terms of intellectual copyright, when you're a writer, an author, when someone just literally takes your idea and rehashes it, you do feel a little bit outraged because it's a lot of work and all of that. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Well, you think you'd have a stronger case with that. But anyway.
Emma, Ella, really good to have you. Sorry, I have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much.
We're out of time. Up next, though, we've got important lessons to be learned about the coronation. This is GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Patagna. Here's your latest weather forecast from the Met Office. We'll hold on to some showery weather across the UK for the time being, but things will turn drier during the week ahead and there'll be some warm sunshine at times too. The showers are all down to low pressure being located fairly close by to the UK at the moment, but notice a build of pressure as we head into the early part of the coming week, and it's that promises to quieten things down. As for the conditions this morning, well, it's a pretty showery start to the day across many western and northern parts of the UK. Some of the showers on the heavy side, 1 or 2 thunderstorms around too. Those showers start to become more widespread as we go into the afternoon, particularly heavy across Northern Ireland. Here we could see some torrential downpours, I think, whereas the southeast of the UK tends to hold on to the best of the dry and bright weather throughout the day, staying mostly dry, I think, here into the evening. We'll also see the best of the temperatures towards the southeast in that sunshine, climbing into the high teens. Best temperatures around about 18 or 19 degrees. 19 is 66 in Fahrenheit. Always a bit cooler though towards the northeast of Scotland. And as we go into the evening and through the overnight period into the early hours of Monday, those showers tend to transfer their way eastwards across the UK. So some showers developing across the southeast there as we head into the early hours of Monday. Whereas out towards the west and northwest, we'll start to see some clearer spells as those showers start to ease down. But wherever you are, with a fair bit of cloud still lingering there, temperatures holding up in the range 7 to 11 Celsius. As for Bank Holiday Monday, well, a fair few showers still likely across some central and eastern parts of England, 1 or 2 on the heavy side, and a bit of showery rain notice there moving into the far north of the UK too, parts of northern Scotland, seeing a fairly damp day on Monday. But elsewhere it's a quieter picture, less in the way of showers, more in the way of bright weather too, and feeling more comfortable, I think, with temperatures doing fairly well in the bright spells, into the mid to high teens Celsius. Again, we could see a high of 19 or 20 degrees towards the south, but still quite chilly up towards the far north east of Scotland. As for the outlook, well, into Tuesday and Wednesday, pressure starts to rise. We see a bit more in the way of sunshine, certainly on Tuesday, but notice towards the north of the UK there by Wednesday, we could see some more cloud developing. That's it. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
The coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event. All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock, it's Sunday the 30th of April. Today, sick and tired, nurses in half of England's hospitals, mental health and community services will go on strike later on today. What does that mean then for patient safety? Of course, the big day is on the way. Coronation lessons, though, will be available to all schools in England to help youngsters understand the celebrations. We've been given exclusive access to one of them.
A coronation topper for the postbox. We're going to be speaking to someone who made this eye-catching topper entirely by hand a little later on in the show. And the last rescue flight out of Khartoum as the agreed ceasefire in Sudan expires tonight. With little food, electricity or medication, there are now serious concerns about welfare.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is Breakfast on GB News.
As always, some of the headlines are a bit depressing, so we wanted to cheer you up to begin with, because we are looking forward to the celebrations, actually all week, but particularly next weekend for the coronation. So we've been asking for 1 or 2 pictures.
Yes.
And you've not disappointed.
You never do, you never do. Well, Peter has sent this picture in.
Oh, look at that. It's a fantastic cake.
Wonderful golden cake.
The
golden
coronation topper, yeah.
What flavours?
That looks very nice. So whoever made that, star. We heard from Rita a little bit earlier on, who's bedecked the family laundry. So she's got back in touch because we asked her for a picture of the laundrette. She says, we're in Lyme Regis in Dorset, famous for Mary Anning. And look at that, absolutely covered in flags.
I love it.
Very
really,
nice
really
too.
nice.
I'd go there.
Yeah, me too. We should do a little day trip.
Yeah.
Linda in Suffolk says, we've made this, which is a postbox topper, I think you'd call it, in our craft group. Our daughter Alice was at school with Ellie. Keep up the amazing work. Oh, what's Alice's surname? Do let me know.
Yeah.
Via email,
there you
gbnews@gbnews.uk. What a small world. You must be in Essex then, which makes you a great person in my book.
I love these postbox toppers.
That's great, isn't it? It's got the roses and...
Everything on.
Everything.
Just love
Union
it.
Jack, brilliant.
Leslie in Lincoln, good morning to you. These fab knitted crowns, she says. Oh, look at that. At the entrance of my local Waitrose. And they're just on, like, the traffic bollard things.
Now, this I like.
They're really nice.
Yeah. And again, did they go out and measure them before they did them?
I don't know.
And how long did they take?
Sort of tied on a little bit at the bottom. They are absolutely fantastic.
And are they waterproof? These are the important questions. Carol has sent in a photo. She said, this is just outside the post office at Groomsbridge in East Sussex. Groombridge in East Sussex. Oh, wow, look at this. This is a whole family photo, really.
Yeah.
Got the King and the Queen consort until she's crowned next Saturday. On top of this postbox with corgis. Absolutely lovely. Absolutely beautiful. All knitted. It's amazing.
Yeah, keep your pictures coming in all week, actually. Because we're wanting to share the joy all through the week, particularly next weekend, of course. So we're going to have a very busy show.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I don't know how busy it's going to be in hospitals up and down the country. There's another strike, RCN strike. It starts tonight about 8 o'clock. It will go on for 24 hours, and they reckon it's going to affect about half the hospitals, mental health care units and other facilities across the country. But, of course, it's only going to last 24 hours, not 48, because of that court ruling earlier on in the week. But where does this leave the government in all of this in terms of the negotiations? Let's talk to Camilla Tominey, who's prepping for her show at 9:30 this morning, and no doubt it's going to be a hot topic, Camilla. Do you get the impression, I mean, I don't know, but do you get the impression that perhaps in all of this, the government has finally got the upper hand?
Well, it's taken some time, though, hasn't it, Stephen? Good morning to both of you. In the sense that I think the public's getting increasingly exasperated. You mentioned the RCN strikes there, and obviously people will be very worried about their own health care. Is this a sense of doctors and nurses putting their interests ahead of those of patients? We just had the teachers' strikes, and again, they're due to walk out next week on Tuesday. And then we've had this ASLEF announcement about trains being on strike when people want to go and watch Eurovision, when the Epsom Derby is on, and for the FA Cup final. So I think from a public's perspective, there's a sense that the government has never got a grip on this issue, that this has gone on for far too long. They've called it a second winter of discontent. And I don't think it's done the Conservative Party's chances very well when it comes to the local elections rearing their ugly head on Thursday.
Yes, and that's something you're going to be talking about in the programme at 9:30, aren't you, Camilla?
Indeed so, Ellie. So I'm going to have Mark Harper on, the Transport Secretary, going to ask him about the Conservatives' chances on Thursdays, because there are polls that suggest that they could hemorrhage as many as 1,000 seats. I'll also be grilling him on the issue of smart motorways, of course, be discussing the strikes and other matters. Vince Cable is going to be joining us, which is a treat because the Liberal Democrats seem to be a little bit shy about coming on GB News. Not sure why they won't address our audience. So we'll be speaking to the former Liberal Democrat leader and finding out what Liberal Democrat policies they actually have, because I'm not aware of any at this stage, and how they think they might mop up if the Tories do have a hemorrhaging of support on Thursday. I'm also really excited to be speaking to Sir Anthony Selden. You'll both be familiar with the new book that he's written about Boris Johnson, which has got a load of quite fascinating revelations about his attitude towards Brexit, the breakdown of his marriage from Marina and his subsequent relationship with Carrie. Was it the pandemic that did for him? Was he ever fit for office in the first place? And Sir Anthony's giving us his first exclusive interview a little later in the show too.
Fantastic. What are you prepping for at the weekend, Camilla? Have you got your coronation decks all sorted out?
Well, what am I not prepping for? We're going to be bringing this show live from Buckingham Palace, so it's going to be a Camilla Tominey show coronation special with loads of special guests on that Sunday morning. In the meantime, just lots and lots and lots of writing for The Telegraph. I mean, royal events don't get bigger than a coronation. I was kind of worried because I thought people weren't really into it last week, but now that the morning's newspapers are full of coronation news and we've seen GB viewers and listeners putting out their own bunting, I think finally Britain is ramping up for this event on Saturday. And of course, there's going to be the coronation story to tell, but I'm sure I'll also be on Harry watch, because there's this sense that Prince Harry's going to come in and it's going to be very hurried and it's going to be out in 24 hours. But we're all going to be watching the body language with him and his royal relatives, aren't we?
Well, yes, we will.
What do you make of that excuse, Camilla? We've been debating that this morning, haven't we? The excuse that it's Archie's 4th birthday and he needs to rush back to be at that birthday party. What do you think? Is that an excuse, or do you think that's valid?
Well, I think maybe parents will find it valid. Don't forget that Meghan famously told Oprah Winfrey the only title she cared about was that of being mom. And therefore, if their most important titles in life are of mum and dad, then they want to be seen to be being with the children. But I also think it's a convenient way of avoiding any kind of royal family showdowns, because if he isn't there beyond the service and he literally flies in and out, then there aren't going to be any opportunities for peace talks. But I think probably after his intervention at the High Court in the week, where he again threw William under a bus, probably all sides are happy with that scenario right now.
Yeah, well, keeps it simple, doesn't it? Camilla, thank you. We'll see you just before 9:30. Thanks very much indeed. One thing Camilla could do when she's not busy working would perhaps give coronation lessons.
Yes.
Because she knows her stuff. She's worked on the royals a long time. But coronation lessons are going to be made available to all schools in England this week to celebrate and teach students about the big day on Saturday.
Yes, the government wants young people to learn about the monarchy, but it's a generation who are mostly disinterested in the institution.
Well, our royal reporter Cameron Walker has been given exclusive access to a lesson fit for a king.
The person that is going to wear St. Edward's crown on 6th of May 2023 is going to be King Charles.
In less than a week, King Charles will enter Westminster Abbey for an event not seen in this country for 70 years. For Britain's children and indeed their parents, Saturday the 6th of May is the first chance to see St. Edward's crown placed on a monarch's head. While more than 3/4 of over 65s want to continue with the monarchy, rather than an elected head of state, less than a third of 18 to 24-year-olds agree, according to the latest YouGov poll. The monarchy has a big challenge to engage younger generations, and the government's been looking for an opportunity to celebrate the new reign with Britain's schoolchildren.
Kings of Scotland were crowned at their coronation sitting on the stone of Scone. Describe the stone with your partner. 10 seconds. What shape is it?
GB News has been given exclusive access into a coronation lesson commissioned by the Department for Education, soon to be available in all schools across England. Steve Mastin, a teacher and education consultant, was tasked with designing a lesson simple enough to engage young children.
I don't think you have to be a pro-monarchy teacher to teach a lesson about the coronation, because I think the Department of Education was thinking children should know what's going to happen on May the 6th. Otherwise, it's just a TV programme where a crown gets put on King Charles's head. But of course, it's much, much more than that. It's part of our history that goes back 1,000 years.
The Year 4 class at St Mary's Church of England Primary School in northwest London learnt about the special objects they'll see on Saturday.
My favourite object that we learn is the orb because it represents good. My favourite part of the lesson was when we learnt about how King Charles has to hold a sceptre with the orb in both hands. I found out a new word. It's actually a Latin word called corona. It means crown.
Separate material has been made for both primary and secondary schools, and Schools Minister Nick Gibb wants to ensure young people understand the significance of the coronation.
They need to understand really how important it is in terms of the way our country is governed, that the monarchy does play an important part in our constitution, albeit a constitutional monarchy rather than a monarchy with real power. But it's important that they do understand that and all the symbolism that comes with the coronation.
So can I see you holding an orb, please? It's very heavy. Very heavy.
The coronation is multi-generational. 2 future kings will be present, and 9-year-old Prince George will be one of his grandfather's pages. His first glimpse of a crown he'll one day wear. Cameron Walker, GB News.
It's lovely that people are starting to celebrate, learning the lessons and also knitting lots of toppers for post boxes. We're going to meet a master knitter, or mistress knitter, I don't know what you call them, in a few minutes. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. We've been talking a lot about the coronation today, and we're going to do so again in a minute. But we've also been talking about nurses because the strike kicks off. The latest RCN strike kicks off at about 8 o'clock tonight. It's going to affect about 50% of hospitals and things. So we seem to think. Irene's been in touch. Hi, Irene. She says, I worked 30 years in care, and as much as our pay wasn't good, I, nor my colleagues, would ever strike. There are other ways to work this out. This is militant unions taking it too far for political means.
And I don't think you'd be alone in that, because I think it's a third of nurses aren't part of a union. Many of them are just saying they just couldn't do it. That's certainly what a sense we're getting. Sian's, have we read Sian's previously?
No.
Don't think we have, no. As a nurse for 42 years, I've never been on strike, ever. This is the last straw for our nurses' camels' backs. People in government must stop seeing us as angels who will never leave the bedside. That's moral blackmail. We are mortals too. We must pay our bills and feed our kids too. The NHS system is already increasingly inadequately dangerous over the past 15 years. Very interesting hearing from nurses themselves. So Sian, nurse for 42 years, out on strike, by the sounds of things, for the first time.
Yeah, just had enough. It's too much. But is it about pay or is it about conditions? Or are the two interlinked? Jan says, I've got no support for the strikes. I hope the government holds out. The nurses should have bigger hearts than wallets. Which it's the sentiment of a lot of people. But you look at Sian and say, well, we've got to pay the bills.
We're human too, yeah. Karen in Gloucestershire says, I would suggest anyone criticising nurses striking should spend a shift with one. Perhaps then they'd see what it's like. I've been a nurse for 38 years and there is no way I would work on a ward now. Very interesting you say that, Karen, because I was speaking to a nurse the other day who'd been a nurse for about 40 years, has now quit because she couldn't provide the care that she wanted to in her heart.
Right.
Because the conditions are so bad. She just said, it was breaking my heart every day going in, not being able to get round the ward, seeing people who needed a wash or a clean, and she couldn't get to them, and it upset her too much. She had to stop.
See, that's interesting. Kate in Cheshire, similar sort of argument, actually. She says, I think the real argument some people forgot is what if the government really stands up and says, no more deals, get on with it? Many assume that would just be it. But in fact, I can see a majority of my colleagues leaving, resulting in damage to the service anyway. You can't have both. Yeah. Mel, on the other hand, says, I totally appreciate our nurses and our doctors are one of a kind, but let's not forget the wonderful pensions and other terms and conditions, such as sick pay, that they get. See, I don't... everyone talks about how good all those things are. I don't know quite how good they actually are, but I think they're better than you get in the private sector.
Lots of people also talking about, do nurses need university degrees? Is that an issue? Should that money not be spent, essentially? Graham says, I feel the government have brought all these problems on themselves. It's the same as the police. Why do nurses have to have a university degree with all of the costs involved in that? I work with many excellent police officers, none of whom had a degree. The nurses can learn the job as they go, and same as the police used to do.
Learn on
Save
the
a lot
job.
of money.
Learn on the job. I don't quite know who pays for degrees for nurses, but are they subsidised?
Well, it was bursaries, wasn't it? I don't know if that's still the case, don't hold me to that, but it
don't
certainly
know.
was very recently when I was at university. It was all paid for by the NHS.
But you see, we need to get more nurses into the profession. I mean, it's part of the issue. Staffing numbers are an issue. And scrap the degree, learn on the job. Surely that would be adequate for most people, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then maybe you do a degree on the job if you need to sort of climb up the rankings a little bit more. I don't know. I think that's really, really, really interesting. Steve in, I don't know if it's Southern or South Wales, Steve, but he says, our very recent experience of the NHS has been excellent care with plenty of staff and no stressed or overwhelmed nurses. Yes, the patient waiting times are bad in A&E, but this didn't impact on the wonderful care we receive. I guess there is an argument there, Steve, to say they didn't show you they were stressed or overwhelmed because they're looking after the patient, but maybe they were behind the scenes. But even so, when you do go, I mean, they are, they do an incredible job. But let's say holding them up as angels, which proves to be problematic, doesn't it, in terms of then how you reform the system. Reform is going to be needed. Even the Labour Party is saying... Well, the Labour Party is saying that more than anybody else at the minute. So it's really, anyway,
which is
really
significant, isn't it?
It is significant, yeah.
But yes, thank you so much for all your views on that. It really has divided you, so thank you for bringing that in. Do keep them coming. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Now, preparations for the coronation and celebrations right across the country are underway as people gear up for the big day on Saturday.
And one woman has found her own unique way to celebrate the new reign by creating a post-box topper in the design of the King's crown.
Yeah, it's Keely Robertson, who runs a crochet business, made the topper entirely by hand. And she joins us now. Really good to see you this morning. I've got to say, these toppers, and we've seen a few pop up around the country. I mean, look at yours there. It's absolutely stunning. It's incredibly skilled work.
Thank you. Yes, it does take a long time to learn and to build the skills up, but I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it looks absolutely fabulous. How long would it take to create this post-box topper?
This particular one took me about 40 hours in total, but they don't have to take that long. This one's a fairly complicated one.
Why did you decide to do it, though?
Why? Well, a friend and I run a crochet group on Facebook for people to learn, and a friend and I have started doing them about 2 years ago, and our community loves them. So that's why we keep doing them. They're really popular within the community.
What is the reaction to them? Because they just look so wonderful.
Well, we get lots of people take photos, send them across to Australia. They go in around the world. We're very small, two very small villages, but the amount of comments that it brings smiles to people's faces. The children like to have photos taken with them. Yeah, it's amazing.
I can only imagine that you are quite a royalist and quite looking forward to the coronation then.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to the coronation. It's a moment of history, isn't it? I mean, I'm in my 50s now, and this is the first coronation, and I've never seen one. So it'll be the way that we celebrate these situations. It's just amazing. So.
I mean, this is all part of the ramping up, isn't it, for the coronation? What's your plan for next Saturday? Are you doing a street party?
Well, our street is doing a street party, but I'm actually on holiday. I'm on a cruise ship. You can probably tell. But there will be it will be shown on the TV. So that's what we'll be doing with our flags. So yes.
Oh, wonderful. The best of both worlds, a party and a holiday all at the same time. You can't argue with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what about... Can I ask about the skill set here? Because, I mean, there's often talk about us losing a lot of our skills when it comes to things like knitting and sewing and crocheting and carpentry and all these sort of things, which are disappearing a bit. Do you think this sort of thing helps with the resurgence? Because it's such an amazing... It must be an amazing feeling to look at that and say, I made that.
Yeah, I think that's the same of all handicrafts, isn't it? When you've made something and you're proud of it. Certainly from a resurgence point of view, yes, I run some face-to-face classes as well as a group, and my face-to-face classes filled up straight away for people wanting to learn. So there is, and all age groups, from very young to much older ladies, and it has been ladies for me, but I know that there are men that crochet. But we've had such resurgence, yes.
And are you hoping now that people watching or listening on the radio now will create their own postbox topper if they've got the skills?
Absolutely. And to be fair, as long as they can do some of the basic things and make a simple flower and put a few of those on the postbox topper, their community will love it. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant. People appreciate
Well, yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, have you created one for the funnel of your cruise ship? That'd take some work.
Oh, yes, it would, wouldn't it? No, I'm trying to be on holiday.
Let her relax.
Yeah. Well, look, I tell you what, Keely, well done on that, because it is fantastic. Have a wonderful holiday and enjoy the coronation on TV.
Yes, do.
Thank you for having me.
Well, pleasure. Thanks very
pleasure.
much indeed, Keely. I just think they're really nice little things.
I agree with you. They bring a smile, don't they? And they'll certainly bring a smile to Keely's community as well. And hopefully it's inspired you at home. If you're a keen knitter, you can make a postbox topper. They look great.
Crochet, yeah, crochet. I mean, I don't know how to crochet. I've no idea. If men can do it, why not? Maybe I'll give it a whirl. You never know. You never know. Hey, well, that is it from us. You're back tomorrow. I'm back on Friday in preparation for the coronation. But Camilla's here right now.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. No crocheting, but we do have a very busy show for you today. I'm going to be speaking to Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, about the latest wave of rail strikes. I'll also be speaking to the former leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Vince Cable, and I'll be interviewing top pollster Sir John Curtis about Thursday's elections.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news.